So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Village of Belcarra Council meeting. I wish to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Tum Tumewaitin, or Belcarra, is home to an ancestral village of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. We are thankful to conduct our work within their territory. So I'd like to call to order the meeting at 7 o'clock on the dot. So I'm going to ask Lorna to outline the amendments to the agenda, if she could, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We would like to add item 5.9, which is a report from Stuart Novak regarding risk of wildfire and evacuation. And also add a report under 6.4 for Councillor Drake, which is a follow-up on the motions from the regular council meeting held July 5th. And there is also an item on the agenda that the proponent has requested to have withdrawn, and that's item 5.8.
Okay, good. So if we could get a councillor to move.
So moved.
And
Councillor
seconded.
Clark moving and Councillor Wilder seconding, and it is appropriate. It's on the floor by discussion by councillors. Any discussion on these? Not hearing any? I will look to call the question. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Aye. And I look and I say the affirmative carry it. Correct, Bruce Drake? Okay, and it's unanimous. So thank you. That carries. And then we will go to the adoption of the minutes of regular council meeting of July 5th, 2021. And I'll have a councillor move that the minutes from the regular council meeting held July 5th, 2021 be adopted. So a mover, Councillor Wilder, thank you. And Councillor, sorry, I didn't miss a seconder. Wilder?
No, I moved.
You moved?
Looking for a seconder.
I can second, but I would like to make an amendment to the minutes
Oh,
or note something on the minutes if that's possible.
okay, so why don't you second it if you could?
Yeah, I'll
And
second.
then let's, if it's okay, let's hear what you're looking to do. Okay,
Thank you. So under 6.5, it says Councillor Clark, parking and traffic update. It says here, Councillor Clark expressed concern with regard but bus delays caused by traffic lineups at the park. I would like that to be recorded, that it wasn't just a concern with bus delays, but also concerns with first responders being able to get into the village on a timely manner during those lineups. I would like that to be recorded. So, you know, yeah, I think it's good to be recorded that we have that concern.
okay, so let's go through the Chief Administrative Officer. Are you picking up what Councillor Clark's saying?
Yes, that's fine. I have that amendment, Your Worship.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and it's in order, and it's on the table for discussion right now. Anybody who want to, on council, want to, not seeing any, I will look to call the question.
Could we have a seconder for the amendment, Your Worship?
Yeah, I believe Councillor Clark is seconding it.
But she
I
then
second the
moved an
motion.
amendment.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so you moved, yeah, sorry, I'm moving too quickly. Councillor Clark, you need someone to help you out with that, please.
So second her
Drake.
amendment.
Councillor Drake, I'll put him down as seconding the amendment. So the amendment is on the floor right now for discussion. Any discussion from council? Not seeing anyone, we'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye.
Aye.
And I would note that the affirmative carry and it's unanimous. Okay, so we're now on the regular motion and that does have a mover. Councillor Wilder, correct, and
Correct.
Councillor Clark seconding. Okay, so any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please.
Aye.
Aye, and I'll note that it is the affirmative carry and it's in the unanimous. So we are now moving on. Thank you very much. On to number 4, delegations and presentations. And I would like to introduce Ione Smith, who will provide a presentation regarding Tri-Cities Regional Food Security Action Plan. So welcome to our meeting, Ione. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, Paula, is it possible for me to share my screen for my PowerPoint slides? Yay, awesome. Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Ione Smith. I'm a consultant, professional agrologist, and I've had the absolute pleasure of working on this project since February with a team of 2 other consultants from Urban Food Strategies and a research analyst as well from Upland Agricultural Consulting. So a team of 3 of us. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes tonight to walk you through the plan's process and the draft plan itself. And as you'll see in your agenda, it's simply here for information at this point. So can I go next slide, or do I need to get you to do that, Paula?
If you just say next slide, she will.
Okay,
for
next
sure.
slide, please. So I'm going to provide you with a little bit of a background on how the plan came to be, and then the process as well. And I think it will probably be quite interesting too for you to hear about the engagement. And then I'll summarize quickly the actual plan itself, and then hopefully provide a couple minutes for any feedback or questions that you might have. Next slide, please. We had most of the funding, or all of the funding really, was from the Union of BC Municipalities under the Poverty Reduction Strategy funding. And as I mentioned, it was a team of consultants from Upland Agricultural Consulting and Urban Food Strategies, but all 5 communities within the Tri-Cities region were actively involved through in-kind support. And we had the pleasure of having Councillor Clark on the steering committee. Next slide, please. It was a very short timeline to get this project to the finish line, and that was a timeline that was imposed by UBCM. So we knew that from the get-go, so we really hit the ground running in February. We pulled together a steering committee, which was essentially a subset of the Tri-Cities Food Council, and we've been able to meet with them 4 times. We have one final meeting coming up in August with them to discuss implementation of the plan. This was one of the most sophisticated steering committees that I've had the honor of being involved with in this type of project. They represented everyone from different elected officials to Fraser Health, to the Public Health Association of BC. The school district was involved. It was a really great group. So very well informed, very sophisticated in terms of the level of knowledge that they brought to the table. And so where we are now in the timeline is essentially right at the end, but we did do several points for engagement. We did 2 public events, which were held virtually due to the COVID restrictions. So we held them via Zoom, and each of those public events brought about 70 to 80 people to the table. We also had a survey, which garnered over 150 responses. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it was a very well-rounded steering committee, and this is just a list of some of the organizations that were represented. So in addition to the school district and Fraser Health, we also had BC Ministry of Children and Family Development staff. We had food rescue organizations, and we had planning staff as well as counselors from all 5 of the municipalities. Next slide, please. In addition to the survey, which I mentioned, and the 2 community online events, we also performed over 20 interviews one-on-one with key stakeholders from the food system in the Tri-Cities region. And that included individuals from the steering committee, as well as additional food rescue organizations. We also had the opportunity to speak with people who were living with experiences of food insecurity within the community, which was really important. And as I mentioned, we had the steering committee, and we've had 4 of 5 of the meetings so far. Next slide, please. So the overall objective of the plan was to provide a long-term decision-making action framework that all 5 communities could get involved with and partner and collaborate together with community organizations and health authorities to really better support and encourage actions that would increase household and community food security in the region. So when we think about food security, we can think of it at the community level and also the household level. Next slide, please. We were also able to produce 2 key supporting documents to the final plan. One is the engagement summary report. And so that documents all of the outreach that we did and all of the feedback that we heard throughout the way. And then the second one is a community profiles and food security assessment report. So we do a deep dive into each of the 5 communities, including Village of Belcara. So there's a whole chapter on Belcara regarding the official community plan, zoning bylaws, any local government strategies and plans that could be enhanced by incorporating goals around food security are considered within this document. Next slide, please. So we have a shared vision for the plan itself, and I'll read it out here because I do think it's the only thing that I'll really read, but I think it's worthwhile sharing it. The Tri-Cities region is working together collaboratively and is building capacity to make sure that every resident is food secure and is a part of a community where the cost of living is aligned with income levels. The region embraces food as a valuable resource and is striving towards zero food waste. Local nonprofits are key partners in delivering culturally appropriate food programs. Food production and sustainable farming are part of a thriving regional economy. Residents come together through schools, community gardens, and shared kitchens to grow, cook, and celebrate a diversity of foods. Healthy and local food choices are available and accessible by all means of transportation within residential areas throughout the region. And I'll say that this vision statement was pulled together by the community. So we didn't, grab it out of thin air. There was a lot of feedback through the survey and through the steering committee meetings and through the interviews that helped to inform the vision statement. And those 5 shared values are reflected within the vision statement. One of the other things we did as a value add for the project was to create an online food asset map for the entire region. So you can just see a screen capture of it there. But this will be a live Google My Maps platform resource for the community, and it can be very easily updated over time. So we're going to be leaving that with the Tri-Cities Food Council so that they will be able to provide updates over time to it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that there are 2 levels of food security: household food security and community food security. And I just wanted to provide a quick overview of each. So the core issues for household food security are often low income, the inability to purchase food that's needed or that's wanted because of poverty levels, or food that is too expensive to meet the goals of the family or the goals of the household. So the elements there involve poverty reduction, social justice, housing affordability, and so on. At the larger scale for community food security, we're talking about more of a disconnection between residents and their food systems. So at that level, we're talking more about things like farmland protection, food waste management, community gardens and community kitchens, processing infrastructure, and so on. So just to give you a sense of some of the elements that we grappled with when we pulled the plan together. Next slide, please. So the way the plan is structured is that there's one vision statement, which I just read out, and that's broken into 5 goals. And the goals are the broad desired outcomes that will be required to achieve the vision. Within those 5 goals, we've come up with 14 objectives to achieve the goals. And that's broken down further into 60 specific actions. So those actions provide detailed directions on how to achieve the objectives. And I promise I won't read you all 60 actions. Next slide, please. I read the vision statement, so I won't read it again, but just to remind you, the key themes that were brought up during engagement was around the need for more collaboration sometimes between the 5 communities when it comes to food security, tackling the cost of living, which is a challenging thing from a local government jurisdiction, as you know, reducing food waste, and that will require collaboration with commercial partners and also the regional government, Metro Vancouver. Looking at how to collaborate with key nonprofit NGOs. So there's lots of really great organizations in the Tri-Cities, like the Share Society, the Immigrant Link Society, and so on. Looking at how to build capacity through community economic development, celebrating food, using food as an opportunity for education and food literacy, and also looking at ways to access food without needing a car. So that was something also that came up quite a bit. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 goals. I mentioned there was 5 goals. The first is to really strengthen collaboration and grow internal capacity at the local government level. The second is to support the work of these amazing food system organizations that have a place within the Tri-Cities region. The third is to align local government policies and strengthen regulations to improve food security. The fourth is to invest directly within the local food and agriculture economy. And the last is to elevate education and celebration of the cultural diversity of the regional food system. Next slide, please. So I'm only going to provide a couple of examples of the actions. As I mentioned, I promise I won't read all 60, but just so you get a sense of how detailed they are. So under goal 1, which was around collaboration and growing internal capacity, we have the first objective, which is to increase internal food security planning capacity within the Tri-Cities. So specific action is ensure that municipal staff and councils read the documents that have been created in association with the plan, endorse the plan, and sign the accompanying food charter. So the food charter is in the appendix of the plan. Another example is under goal 2 around supporting the work of existing food systems organizations. The objective there is to increase food aggregation and distribution infrastructure at the regional level. So the action under that one would be to seek funding to look into a feasibility assessment for a regional food aggregation or distribution center, which would be designed to ensure food quality and health safety measures are met. Next slide, please. And then just 2 more. The third goal, which was align policies and strengthen regulations. So the objective there is to integrate food security into your existing policies and bylaws. So the specific action is to refer back to that community profiles and policy assessment report for each community to make sure that the specific recommendations in that report are pulled into things like OCPs and zoning bylaws. Under goal 4, to invest directly into the local food and agriculture economy. The objective there, 4.2 in this case, is to provide direct support to local food businesses. So for example, as an action is to use that food asset map that's been created as an advertising tool to connect consumers to local producers and make sure it's kept up to date. Next slide, please. So we're at the stage now of the plan where we're presenting it to each of the 5 councils. We're going to be meeting with the steering committee next month to talk about implementation. We've come up with 4 potential scenarios for implementation, and they really range in terms of the level of input and the level of resources required by each of the local governments. We understand there's a lot of competing interests for local government resources. We're not anticipating that all 5 local governments are going to come to the table with money to hire a new person or a consultant or a staff member to lead this implementation. However, we think there's some creative options out there. And with COVID recovery funding coming from different levels of government, it's actually a great time to try to come and look at potential funding opportunities for this plan's implementation, because food security is really something that came to the forefront during COVID. So we're presenting in the plan 4 different scenarios, and we're going to be talking to the steering committee next month about the best way to move forward. And a recommended scenario that we're sort of zeroing in on at the moment is scenario D, which is looking at collaboration between levels of government and nonprofit organizations for implementation. And in the report itself, we provide examples of where we've seen that work in different communities. Next slide, please. So that's it. Hopefully I haven't gone through all my minutes, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them now or reach out later.
So Ione, thank you very much for that very good presentation and so needed. We really appreciate that. What I will do right now is we go through members of council with questions first, and then we go to our audience. And I would like to ask Councillor Clark if she would like to lead off with any questions or observations, and really want to applaud her work on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. No questions for me. I've read all of the reports. I've said through most of the meetings, and I just want to thank you again, Ione, for the great work, and the whole committee for the great work. No questions at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on council? Okay. So let's, and I'm looking to see if there's anyone in our audience that would like to ask a question or make an observation. And I'm not seeing anybody right now, so I will return to council. And I would like to thank you very much for your work. Very, very impressive. And just 2 quick things. I was on the weekend, was in Sechelt, and one of their local bakeries, Wheatberries, has a sign, 3,500 meals provided by their bakery and by local business and local community coming together that during COVID-19 that just created an unyielding need for food. And some of the things that you're talking about, I think, are very impressive, like that a car and a vehicle as a barrier to get food is so significant. So it's a very, very impressive report with the details. So thank you for your work and all the people, the consultants that worked with you. And at this point, not seeing any others, I will look to get a motion that the presentation provided by Ione Smith, Director Upland Agricultural Consulting Limited regarding Tri-Cities Region Food Security Action Plan be received for information. And Councillor Wilder is moving that.
So
and
moved.
Second.
Councillor Clark seconding that. So it's on the floor. Any further discussion? Not seeing anyone. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I will note that the affirmatives carry and it's unanimous. So Ione, thank you very much for coming. And we always let our guests know that they're welcome to stay, but they have no obligation. And I'm sure you've seen your fair share of Zoom meetings. So
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will log off because I've got little kids I need to get to bed, but I appreciate it.
that's it. We want to give people that release. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks very
Okay.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Ione.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Okay, so it's my pleasure now to move to our second presentation, and I get to introduce Kim Halowski and Darren Wong, who will provide a presentation regarding Fortis's BC Climate Action Plan. And I'd just like to say two things before you start. Number one, Kim, thank you. As I expressed before, I really, it was wonderful you reaching out and us being able to talk before, and I was intrigued both with the work you're doing and the work that you've done in the past. And I just also said that I would introduce, and I don't know if she's on tonight, but is Sherry Chisholm on tonight? She's not. Aha, okay. Well, I indicated to you that we had a longtime person who had worked with Fortis BC before and done tremendous work. So I wanted to recognize her tonight. And so I will recognize her, but she's not here tonight. And we give even our best, most loyal supporters time off. So go ahead, please, Kim and Darren. Welcome, both of you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this evening. Paula, are you able to pull up our slides? Perfect. Thank you. So I would like to just first acknowledge that I'm delivering this presentation from my home in South Surrey on the traditional unceded territories of the Salish peoples, in particular, the Semiahmoo, the Katzie, Tawasin, Stolo, Wasnek, and Kwantlen nations. So I appreciate the introduction as well, Mayor Ross. I am Kim Halowski. I'm a Community Relations Manager with Fortis BC, and I have my colleague Darren Wong, a Community and Indigenous Relations Manager, who's going to join me on the Q&A portion later. So Darren and I work in collaboration with municipalities across the Lower Mainland on daily operations, major projects, and climate action initiatives. So tonight, we're really excited to share with you what we're doing to help communities on climate action. Next slide, please. So to begin, I thought it might be helpful to share some background information about Fortis, as some of you may not be aware that we are the province's largest deliverer of energy. In fact, our utility is responsible for delivering 1.2 million, we serve approximately 1.2 million customers across 135 communities. And our utility actually is responsible for delivering 21% of the province's energy needs. And I thought it was important to also highlight that there are approximately 244 natural gas customers in the village of Belcarra as well. So in the Lower Mainland, Fortis is responsible for delivering renewable and natural gas, but a lot of people don't know that we also deliver electricity up in the Okanagan as well as in the Kootenays. We own and operate 4 hydroelectric dams, and we also operate approximately 7,300 kilometers of electric power lines, and an additional approximately 49,000 kilometers of gas lines. So it's an extensive distribution service. Next slide, please. So given the significance of our energy services across the province, it was important for us to play a constructive role in the development of Clean BC. The province's Clean BC target, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, is to reduce GHG emissions by 40% from the 2007 levels by 2030, and to further reduce GHG emissions by 80% by the year 2050. So as part of our consultation with the government on the development of Clean BC, we submitted our plan, which is called the Clean Growth Rate Pathway to 2050, which outlines the role that we anticipate Fortis BC could play in achieving the province's target. Next slide, please. To get to 2030, we set our target to reduce our customers' greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. This is in fact one of the most ambitious GHG reduction targets by any Canadian utility today. Next slide, please. And so the big question is really, how do we plan to get there? Well, in order to reach our target, we developed a plan that comprised of these 4 pillars. The first pillar focuses on energy efficiency, and we're investing approximately $90 million annually in rebate programs and other support programs by the year 2022 to make new and existing buildings more energy efficient. The second pillar focuses on renewable natural gas, and this includes using sources from organic waste as well as wood waste to create renewable energy. So by 2030, you'll see that 15% of the gas in our delivery system will come from renewable carbon neutral sources. The third pillar focuses on liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and this is a great opportunity for us to help reduce GHG emissions in certain sectors that have real difficulties moving towards electrification, such as marine shipping. So we are seeking to expand our current Tilbury LNG facility, which is located in Delta, to meet this need, and really wish to position the Port of Vancouver as an LNG marine fueling hub. Some of our local customers include Seaspan as well as BC Ferries. And our fourth pillar really focuses on zero and low carbon transportation. So we are very supportive of electric vehicles in the passenger market, and we've introduced several charging stations in the interior. And we also strive to support the expansion of alternate fuel vehicles in the medium and heavy duty sectors, such as waste haulers, as well as transit buses. Next slide, please. So really it is about all working together to really reach our, if we work together towards Fortis's 30 by 30 targets, it's going to set us up for success in terms of achieving the province's 2050 GHG reduction targets. Our vision for 2050 is to become using a diversified pathway that uses both electric as well as the gas systems to achieve these provinces' targets. The vision is supported by a study that we consulted. We worked with a consulting company called Guidehouse and commissioned a report. And what they did is they examined 2 ways for achieving these targets. The first pathway focused very specifically on more of a significant electrification approach. The second option focused on using both energy and the electric systems that currently exist in our province today, and they called this study the diversified pathway. The study found truly that both pathways can achieve the 2050 targets, but the benefit of the diversified pathway is that we can continue to use the systems and maintain the reliability and resiliency in our current energy systems today. And as you look at what's happening around the world, having that resiliency is really important. So there's really 2 points I wanted to highlight from this report. The first is by using the diversified pathway by 2050, 73% of the gas delivered to your community today through the gas systems will need to come from renewable carbon neutral sources. The second point to highlight is that the gas system really provides the firm, flexible energy delivery capability that we need during peak demand times, such as during the winter. Under the electrification pathway, it's noted that in order to replace the gas system that plays a major role in heating water as well as heating buildings, especially during peak demand situations, the province would require an additional 8,800 megawatts of new electricity generation, which is very significant. So our main takeaway from this report is that we could fully utilize the current infrastructure that we have today, not only below ground, but as well as above ground. And so I just really wanted to stress the importance for you as a community when you look at your planning and decision making, the decisions that you make today or tomorrow are really needs to be looked at in a broader context to really determine what's best for your community in respect to affordability, the impact on the community, and also the resilience in the community. Next slide, please. So in closing, I appreciate that I've given a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. My intent today was really to open up dialogue, to share some of this information, and to let you know that myself and Darren, we are here to support the community. So I want to thank you very much for your time this evening. And if you have any immediate questions, Darren and I are happy to answer them at this time.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kim. And we will now go to our council members, and we'll see if we have anybody on council that would like to ask a question. Bruce Drake. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kim, for the presentation. I must admit I'm rather impressed with the kind of numbers you're able to cite. I wouldn't have thought coming up with a transition strategy for Fortis would be an easy thing to do. So I've learned several things. One, you actually do carry a fair amount of electricity, which is obviously a plus. The organics, what percentage did you anticipate you would be at by 2030 in terms of producing natural gas with organic or renewable sources?
So by 2030, we were at 15%. And as you move towards 2050, we would be past 70%.
Okay, so obviously it's a very preliminary work taking place now, and the supply, but it appears the supply is there in terms of the amount of organic waste. Is it primarily coming from, you're saying, is it wood waste? Sorry, what's the primary source then of the renewables?
And I'll let my colleague Darren speak because I've done most of the talking so far. So I'll turn it to Darren and to supplement.
Fair enough.
Sure. So thanks, Kim, through your worship to Councillor Drake.
Yes.
With
absolutely.
respect to the amount of renewables in the system right now, we have currently six renewable natural gas suppliers in various parts of the province, and those are primarily from organic waste sources, so landfills and wastewater treatment plants. But over the past 18 months, though, we've achieved significant progress on getting new renewable gas supply contracts approved. So over the next, we can anticipate over the next 3 to 4 years that we'll be kind of in the neighborhood of achieving 10% of the supply in the gas system being from renewable sources. One of the sources that we're pretty excited about is we've partnered with a supplier called Ren Energy in Fruitvale, BC, and they're going to be producing renewable natural gas from wood waste. And that's going to result in 1 million gigajoules of renewable natural gas produced from that facility over the long term, over the next couple of decades. I believe it's a 20-year supply contract. So, so that's what Kim mentioned. I mean, there's sort of traditional sources, and Fortis BC has been collecting, or essentially been putting in renewable natural gas from organic sources for over 10 years. But there's definitely new ways to get that renewable natural gas, wood waste being one of the feedstocks. And as we move forward, into 2030 and beyond, hydrogen injection is another way that could be a way to bring more renewable gas that is low carbon into the system, and that can be blended, or perhaps there's other ways for us to utilize infrastructure we have today to deliver hydrogen. So still early days, of course, but there's lots of discussion, of course, all around us with respect to kind of the future of the gas systems, not only here in BC, but elsewhere in North America as well.
Can you quickly tell me the source of the hydrogen would be what?
Well, so I guess there's a couple of ways hydrogen can be sourced. There's blue and green hydrogen. So blue hydrogen would come from extraction of natural resources, but then what would make it low carbon is that there'd be carbon capture associated with that production of hydrogen. And then with respect to green hydrogen, that would come from electrolysis produced from electricity generation. So whether that's electricity produced from wind or solar, those are the different types of ways that hydrogen can be produced from that generation. So essentially, what could be the benefit of the gas system in that scenario is that essentially those forms of generation are intermittent, right? So of course, you need to, they're weather dependent. So the idea would be to take that surplus generation when it's available, and then convert it to hydrogen so that it can be injected into the gas system, and essentially the gas system would act as battery storage for the times when energy is needed, and when the wind isn't blowing or when the sun isn't shining. So those are the types of things that various there's lots of discussions around these types of technologies. Some of it's being used in Europe on a pilot basis at the moment. So really excited about how that's going to work for us. With respect to the work that Fortis BC is doing, we're supporting a study with the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, as to determine what percentage of hydrogen can be safely blended into the gas system. So in some parts of the world, there's different concentrations, but for Fortis BC, and considering kind of the diversity of pipes that we have across the province, what blend is going to work, and so that work is being undertaken right now. So So I guess kind of the picture is there's lots of exciting things here at Fortis BC, and we've definitely got an eye to the future with respect to obviously helping communities across the province move to a lower carbon world.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Great. And anybody else on council with a question? Okay, I had a question. Maybe I'll pose it to Darren. I think what was related was some of the charging stations that are being done around electrification were happening in the Okanagan. Can you just give me your rationale, if available, of why you picked that area rather than another one?
Yeah, so appreciate the question, Your Worship. Basically, it comes down to our set service territories.
Yeah.
Fortis BC is the electric service territory in the Okanagan and the Kootenays. BC Hydro serves other parts of the province, including the Lower Mainland. So, that's basically what it comes down to. Maybe at some point, depending on what happens with the market, we have expertise in this area. So, basically kind of see what happens. But, as for right now, both utilities are respecting their various boundaries. And with respect to the work that we're doing, it's pretty significant. We've got, I know Kim mentioned a few. There's actually almost close to 30 actually charging stations across our service territory in the southern Okanagan. The idea was to essentially to kind of create basically kind of an anxiety-free experience for folks that have electric vehicles, so that if they're going out to wine country or they're touring that part of BC, they don't have to worry about charging at a hotel or at a community center. Essentially, they can access these stations at key points along their journey. Yeah. So that's really kind of the strategy behind our deployment of electric charging stations, and we're trying to get them out as fast as we can. So we know that the transition, of course, is happening, and we just want to be there to support it.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. So thank you, and let's look to see if we have anyone in the audience with a question. So I'm not seeing any, so we're going to come back to council, and we'll have a motion that the presentation provided by Kim Halowski, Community Relations Manager, and Darren Wong, Community and Indigenous Relations Manager, Fortis BC, regarding Fortis BC's Climate Action Plan be received for information. Looking for a mover.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Clark with a seconder from Councillor.
I'll second.
Great. Okay, so it's on the table. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll look to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I would note that the ayes carry, and I believe it's in the affirmative and unanimous. Okay. So Kim and Darren, thank you very, very much for coming. Incredibly interesting and ambitious plans. And, we work with Metro Vancouver and TransLink. And so there are some things that are happening there too. So anything that is helping is much appreciated. So thank you. And we will give you that wonderful offer too. You're certainly welcome to stay, but you are not required to stay. So
thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. We look forward to working together. Take care.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Darren. Thanks, both of you. Take care. Okay, so we're on to number 5, and we have Ken, who is with us right now, and he is going to outline the next report. Ken, welcome. Good to see you again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen right now. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, this report is providing information about the district's, the village's various bill payment options at this time and the related banking fees and charges. Currently, the village, just to go through the current situation, the village accepts credit cards for all bills except property taxes. And the village utilizes the TD Bank Merchant Services, whereby it pays fixed and variable fees for the acceptance of credit cards with a minimum charge of $120 per month plus 2.5 to 3% of the transaction values, commonly known as a discount rate that the village pays as well based on transaction values. So in other words, the village currently is absorbing the $120 per month on credit card payments, plus the 2.5 to 3% cost as well. So for example, if a customer came in to pay a development invoice worth $5,000, the village would be absorbing a $125 to $150 cost of that, in addition to the $120 flat rate per month. So that's the current situation in terms of the village's credit cards. As I say, all bills can be paid except property taxes via credit cards. In terms of debit payments, the village, of course, accepts in-person debit card payments. And of course, these are limited often by the banks to transaction limits, whether that be a dollar value limit for the particular transaction, or sometimes there's a daily limit on the transaction values as well. And the village also accepts electronic online payments from a limited number of banks for property taxes only. And this is the situation where the village is listed as a payee with certain banking institutions, which I'm going to go through in a minute. And these banking institutions collect information on behalf of the village, for example, invoice numbers or customer account information, which the village's accesses online or is sent via email or fax, and they use that information to post the payments against the village's financial system into the customer accounts. So currently, the village is listed as an online payee for property taxes for Scotia, RBC, CIBC, the Central Credit Union, which would include all credit unions in the TD. So you can see here that in terms of Scotia, the information is collected by the village from an online banking portal, whereas RBC emails the information and CIBC faxes information, and the other two fax information to the village in terms of who has paid and how much has been paid by certain residents or customers for specific accounts. And currently, the RBC is the one charging for this service at $27 per month. And the village is now in the process of adding BMO to the list of banking institutions which residents and customers may utilize to pay online property tax payments. And the BMO is going to charge $25 per month for this service, plus $2 per payment for monthly payments that exceed 13 for the month. So in other words, if there's under 13 payments for the month, it'll be the $25 flat fee charge. So the village is in the process again of adding the BMO to this list, whereby residents can pay their property taxes through these specific financial institutions. Now, in terms of In terms of the future, keeping in the mind that with the goal of trying to provide maximum options and flexibility to residents and customers, and to minimize the village's banking fees, it's worthwhile to look at the options we have now to see whether we can provide greater flexibility and at the same time controlling the costs for the village. So currently, for credit cards, there are a number of local governments that are accepting credit cards for property tax payments as well, of course, which the village does not offer right now. And they are adding to the property tax bill the discount rate, the 2.5 or 3%. So for example, if someone was paying a bill for $5,000, the customer would pay, based on the 3% discount rate, $5,150 instead of the $5,000, so that the village is not worse off in terms of the total cost it had to pay the institution for the 3%. Of course, the village could accept quotations from other service providers to provide this service to try to minimize charges. The fact of the matter is the discount rate is often based on the value of volume of transactions processed through an organization. So certainly if the credit cards were opened up to more transactions, i.e. property taxes, it's conceivable that the discount rate would go down from the 2.5 to 3%. Now, in terms of the debit payments made via the banks, the village has looked into a option whereby the TD offers a centralized bill payment service. So instead of the institution sending specific payment information via fax or email or through a portal, it would be consolidated through the TD, and the village would receive one report from the TD of all the bank's payees that had paid property taxes through their own banks. But again, it would come through the TD in one report. And the TD for this service charges $250 as a setup fee plus $75 per month. According to BMO, they would still, even though this service is in place, would still charge the $25 per month, even if they provided the payment information to the TD versus directly to the village. And presumably, the RBC would continue to charge the $27 per month as well. The other institutions, of course, are not charging to provide this information, only BMO and TD. I mean, BMO and RBC at this time. So when we look at there's another option that currently is used by the village that I'd just like to go over briefly, and that is the e-transfers that occur through banking customers. The village accepts e-transfers for parking ticket payments currently, and for other payments such as business license. But the village has to communicate with each person sending an e-transfer as to what bill they're paying and how much they're paying, so that the village knows when the money arrives what it's for, so that they can post it to the respective account. The system works well right now for parking tickets, but it's a system that is limited because of the individual hands-on approach that needs to be taken by the village with each customer sending an e-transfer. Excuse me. So this method of payment may evolve in the future when e-transfers possibly they could collect information like account information so that there wouldn't need to be such a hands-on approach from the village in terms of collecting that information. For example, on the phone with the individual making a payment through e-transfers. Now, the real savings comes for the village in terms of time savings when a file can be transferred directly from the institutions or institution collecting the information directly into the village's financial system, whereby there's no manual posting required. The file would be compatible with the village's financial system and would merely be a transfer of that file so that all the customer accounts were updated automatically. So that's where the real savings in the future could come in. But the cost of setting up that service currently is quite hefty at $2,000 to $5,000 with ongoing monthly costs of $250 or more. So there would have to be a cost benefit done for this service to see whether it will work, including the savings of staff time, for example, getting the information from each bank and who has paid and posting that individually into the accounts to see how much time savings that would involve. So basically, that's the situation that is currently in place and the factors affecting the village's bill payments and related banking fees and charges. So as you can see, the systems are evolving as technology evolves. And so in the future, there may be other options, but it would be certainly prudent to come up with a policy as to what the village would like to do. For example, in terms of accepting credit cards, possibly more broadly, or what kind of other bill payment options it would offer for residents and customers so that maximum flexibility can be provided while at the same time trying to control the banking costs as well. So there is a recommendation that a policy be developed on payment options for resident customers for council's consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ken. So we have that. Thank you for the report, and we have a recommendation there. So let's start off this discussion. And do we have a counselor who would like to move it? And Counselor Drake, you're looking to move it?
I'll second. Councillor Clark seconds.
Okay, so that's, thank you. And it's on the floor for discussion right now. Counselor Drake, would you like to open up?
Mayor Ross, could we please maybe stop
Yeah.
sharing the screen? So
Ken, could you take your report down, please?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Counselor Drake, did you?
Yes, thank you, Ken. It seems to me in those cases, obviously a lot of variability. The banks and various financial institutions are all making adjustments in real time. Some of the figures strike me as quite high if we have low volumes of transactions. So just speaking for myself, if we're talking minimal number of people seeking a service, I'd be loath to be spending very much money to make it possible for people, make it convenient for people to make use of those services. It looks like some, like e-transfer, are, you say, are labor intensive, but don't incur the same sort of costs for us. Is that fair?
Mr. Mayor, my hands up isn't working, so I'll just use my.
And
That works.
that is perfect for me, and through the chair to Bruce. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah. So yeah, that's correct. What Councillor Drake has said.
And the other thing I guess I would I had run into, I guess, this adding on the administrative fee, whatever portion of the discount the credit card company is going to apply. BC Hydro employs that as well, I believe. They're prepared to let you pay your hydro bills by that means, as long as you cover their costs of the discount. Why someone would do that other than for convenience is beyond me, because surely none of these institutions are providing a cash back to their users that exceeds the fee that the institution is charging for their use. Not stated very well. Let me try it another way. I can't imagine why anybody would want to pay their taxes by credit card if we were going to charge them the discount fee that gets charged. Do you know anything about that? Is it a common practice? Do people do it?
I
Go ahead.
think from what I understand in other local governments, it is used. I'm not sure of the total volume and transaction value, but I think sometimes people use it also because they're collecting things like air miles as well, right?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what will happen? I suppose you could, yeah, who knows? I guess to me, it just seems that we probably should keep the volume, our numbers down until our volume gets high enough that a given institution makes sense to us. I guess one last question, and it's not really for you. I guess it's really through to Lorna, through the chair. Are we getting complaints now from people that are saying they can't pay in a manner they want to, and are they frequent?
There are a few complaints, yes, Your Worship. And some of them have gone on for a few years from certain residents with paying taxes. The e-transfers have worked very well, actually, for people to make payments that way, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
And the office wasn't open, they could make e-transfers.
Okay, it just seems to me the sorts of fees we're talking about. I mean, we're very small, and because they have certain fixed upfront costs to set up and then a monthly fee, my guess is our percentage cost is going to be relatively high. I recognize the issue of service and providing flexibility to residents, but I guess I wouldn't want to do it without knowing what the out-of-pocket cost to us is of providing that service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drake and Councillor Clark.
I didn't have my hand up, Mayor Ross, but I do agree with Councillor Drake's comments. I certainly don't want to see the village getting shortened for that type of stuff. I think it could add quite a bit, depending on the number of customers that you have or residents that you have using the credit card payments. So, another option, I guess, that we could do or consider is taking those payments just via a check or something that it won't cost the village anything. I'll leave it at that for now, but yeah, anything to save the village some money. Why not?
Okay, I've got my hand up, but let me go and then we'll go to you, Peter. So my sense on this is I think it's important that the work that's in this motion go ahead. I think it's a bit of landscape that we didn't expect when we looked at it. And I think it's important that if there are costs, that the individuals bearing the cost would assume it. And if that adds up for them convenience, I think that makes some sense. I also worry too that, as I think Ken alluded to, as banking changes, things can grow and they can move in ways that we all didn't anticipate. So, I'll look forward to see what comes back. That piece around making things more efficient and easier for our staff, I think is a very good thing. And that part attracts me. I'm going to wait till I see it come back to offer my final thoughts. But, there's a piece of me that says, I don't mind if someone else wants to do something that's more expensive. I just want them within the context to be responsible for that cost. And I am worried that this seems like potentially a bit of, it's hard to figure out where it will go. So thank you. And I will take my hand down now. And Peter, I have you next. Peter, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can ask Lorna a question through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I was wondering, Lorna, we brought this up a couple of years ago about the BMO putting the village at the payee on Bank of Montreal. And up to even this year, we weren't able to. That's why we had to write you guys a check. Now, how long will this take before you get onto the BMO so that we can put it on as a payee on our bank account?
Through the chair, your worship,
Yes, go ahead.
I am working with Ken on this matter. So we'll see when he brings the policy back, if that is approved by council, and then it would be ready for next year's tax season, I would anticipate.
So you have a good idea that it will go through then.
I can't, I don't know.
You have all the
yes.
other major banks, you know.
Yeah, it'll be up to council in the long run. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Clark, you have your, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. And yes, absolutely, I agree with your comments. You know, if there's anything we can do around payments that could save our staff some time, I think that is well worth it discussing. And also, I brought that forward before. I was wondering if, and I don't know if that would be the right conversation on this report. But I was wondering if there's a way that people could do this online, could go to our website and pay the fines, for instance, for parking tickets online. That would be a good thing if, in case, could save staff some time too. And I don't know if that would be the case, but it will give people more flexibility to do payments rather than just the e-transfers. Thank you.
Okay, and I see Ken, and I assume I'll go to him because I believe he's going to maybe respond to Councillor Clark. Ken, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I believe they're, you know, the banks are not the only ones processing credit cards and debit card payments these days. There's third-party providers, including the village's financial system provider, Temple, which runs the Maze financial system. So I believe there are options that can be looked at whereby, yes, a resident or customer could go directly to the village's website and enact a credit card or debit card payment via that web page on the internet, for example, as opposed to going through a bank.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Councillor Clark. And Councillor Wilder, please go ahead.
Thanks. I think Ken just kind of answered my question here. But the other thing I was going to say, our credit card provider is TD Bank, correct?
Yes.
I mean, has Village, I'm sure they have.
Sorry, your question, we're gonna.
Have you guys looked at other, like we use Elevon and they're like a quarter of a tenth of the cost. So yeah, have you looked at other providers that aren't that expensive? That seems really expensive for the few credit card transactions that we have. $120 a month plus the transaction fee. That seems really crazy steep to me. So have we looked at other credit card providers like Elevon or other sources?
So we'll put that question through to Ken, who's raised his hand to find out on the technical term crazy steep. Ken.
Yes, I think the intention now that we've got this report is to look broadly and try to minimize that cost. It's just that traditionally the village has dealt with TD merchant services, and that it's prudent to look at other service providers to minimize that cost.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Peter. And so we kind of mixed, we went from council out and then back in again. So I'm looking in the audience and I'm just going to go for one more, and I'm not seeing anybody else. So I'll return to council now. The question, it's been moved, it's been seconded. It's on the table that a policy on bill payment options for residents, customers be prepared for council consideration. At this point, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I would note that it carries in the affirmative and it's unanimous. So thank you for your report and thank you, council, for the vote on that. And then Ken is going to outline the next report with regarding the COVID-19 Restart Grant update as at June 30th, 2021. Ken?
I'm going to share my screen again, okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So we indicated previously that we would report to council periodically on the status of the COVID Restart Grant and the remaining funds in the grant. So as you'll recollect, last year, the village received $380,000 of the COVID Restart Grant, and that $181,000 was unspent at the end of 2020. So we've provided an accounting of things that are currently coming out of the grant or are anticipated to come out of the grant. And also there are some items that are to be determined and will become more estimable, should I say, maybe by the next quarter at the end of September. So just to go through to you where things are at with the grants. Here's what was left over from last year. There's been COVID general account expenses of $7,805 to date. And the details are provided in this section down here of that $7,805. There's been some labor disruption costs of $63.98 for sick time and coverage. There's been the live streaming technology for council meetings, what was $13,411. So together these items add up to $27,614, which are coming off of the grant. And it's anticipated by year end, we'll probably be spending close to another $7,500 on emergency expenditures. One of the items to be determined now that COVID is waning, should I say, is the fact that we have to figure out if there's any extra staff time that's been involved to date and ongoing with things like extra meetings, other resource time that would be required to deal with COVID related issues. And I know that, for example, Lorna has to deal with a number of COVID related issues sometimes. And so we will be getting more of an estimate of that as we head to the next quarter. The other thing that is slated to come out of the grant is a GIS and digital file management system, which we are getting a more firmer cost on presently. And the other thing that can come out of the grant would be any loss of revenue, which would be dependent on year-end results. And if you'll recollect last year, one of the things that did come out of the grant was our reduced revenue, for example, from development fees, building permit fees. So that would be recoverable from the grant. So presently, according to the known items and this one estimate, there's $146,000 left of the grant. And as we proceed in the year, we'll get more of an idea of these other items which will be coming out of the grant. And then we'll be bringing back further information to council.
Thank you, Ken. So we will, at this point, we'll go to questions and we'll start with council and then we'll move out. So Councillor Drake, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to go?
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. Ken, when does our usable time on this run out?
They haven't indicated a usable end date.
Oh,
but
okay.
Just just from the broad categories that you can use the grant monies for, I don't think that, the village, for example, have any unspent grant funds.
That's you've anticipated where I was going. So you don't at the moment anticipate we're going to lapse any vast amount of money on this process.
No.
And I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for your questions, and through the chair, thank you for your answers, Ken. Anyone else on council? Just looking. I'm not seeing anyone on council, so we will go to the audience and see if there are any questions. I'm not seeing any, so we'll go back to council, and it would be appropriate at this time for the report titled Status of COVID-19 Restart Grant Funds as at June 30, 2021 be received for information. Moved by Councillor.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Wilder moving, Councillor Clark seconding. It's on the floor. Any further discussion? Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Could you please, through the chair, and I don't know if that would be, it would be probably Ken, could you please just get into a little bit on the other anticipated grant spending, which is GIS and digital file management system? What exactly would that be?
Maybe I'll let Lorna give you a brief overview of that, since she's been dealing directly with that matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll move that question. Thank you, Ken. And Lorna, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we were able to determine, or Ken was able to determine, that we could use the COVID funding for a GIS system. And Belcarra is tremendously at a disadvantage by not having a GIS system. And that is where you have a map of the village, and you have each property and any documents that are related to that property. If you hover your mouse over it, the documents would show up. You would know what the zoning is. And it's very common feature in other municipalities. So, and that's what the digital records management part of it is that each property would have all of the documents. And so anyone could go onto our website and look up the information that they're seeking on a particular property. And so it's a very sophisticated mapping system, really.
That's, yeah, that's really neat. Thank you. It's so it has nothing to do with record management, right? Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good. So we're at council right now, and we entertained a question. Seeing no further questions, I will call the question on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the affirmative carry, and no, it's unanimous. So item 5.3, Ken, if you would please go over and outline. Thank you.
I'm just gonna share my screen again.
Yes, thank you.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, it's fine.
So this budget variance report is presented pursuant to the Village of Belcarra's policy, whereby the variance analysis takes place at the end of June, the end of September, and at the end of December every year. So this first report gives council a kind of an idea, even though it's early in the year, whether revenues and expenses are on track. But as the year evolves, of course, we'll have better information. So attached to the report are some detailed analyses for the village's 3 operating funds: the general operating fund budget review, the water operating fund budget review, and the waste and recycle depot operating review and the capital review. So I'm just going to briefly highlight some things within those budget analyses. And the bottom line is that the village is on track in all 3 of its operating funds to meet its budget targets. And of course, as I indicated, it is early in the year and you never know of unexpected things that could still materialize. So if we go down to the detail, which I'm going to look at now, you can see here, for example, in the general operating fund, where revenues are expected to be approximately regular operating revenues are expected to be about $57,000 below budget, or 3.8%. And a lot of that is related to the planning and building permit area. As we see here, interest earnings are lower as well. The TransLink grant is lower, but there's a corresponding reduction on the expense side because we only utilize the amount of grant that is corresponding with the M1R and expenditures. So even though there's a projected decrease in the operating revenues in the general fund, that has been more than offset down here by a reduction in projected operating expenditures being below budget. And you can see here some of the major savings are showing up in the building plumbing bylaw service area, municipal hall operations, public works, of course, because there was a public works vacancy. And then there has been lower vehicle and equipment operating and maintenance costs as well. This is the amount for the MRN grant here, which you can see the $41,000 reduction here corresponds with the reduction in the amount of grant revenue up there. So if we look at the bottom line in the general operating fund, you can see here where the expected transfers into our reserves are expected to be approximately 15,000 greater than budget because of the net effect of operating and revenue differences that are projected at this time. So if we move on to the water operating fund, you can see on the revenue side of things, it's projected to be a little bit lower at about $5,400. And that is mostly related to a smaller number of connections that are expected by end of year. But on the positive side, and this is a real positive, you can see here the water purchase and delivery costs are projected to be approximately $20,000 lower. And I was just looking at the usage of water earlier, and the 2021 usage of water to the 5 months ending May 31st are approximately half of what it was in 2020, and it's back to where it was close to the 2019 levels. So we are projected to save quite a bit of money because of lower water usage in 2021. And hopefully, that continues for the rest of the year, even though we are, as we know, undergoing a very warm summer as well. But it's very positive seeing the fact that water usage has went down to 2019 levels as opposed to the 2020 levels. So the net effect, of course, in the water fund is projected to be an increased transfer to reserves of approximately $35,000 over what was budgeted. So in other words, projected transfers of $65,000 as opposed to $30,000. So if we move on to the ward operating fund, we can see that the revenues are more or less on track with budget. And the expenses are projected to be a little bit lower for the hauling contract because of more favorable terms that the village has now with its hauling provider. So in terms of the overall, in the budget, we were projecting that we would have to use approximately $10,000 from surplus to balance the ward operating fund. Now it's projected to be a bit lower. And so we'll continue to monitor this, and hopefully, by end of year, the hauling side of things is even lower than projected here, which would be an even more positive outcome. So if we look in the capital area, you can see here, this is the capital projections, and you can see here that there's not a lot of spending that has occurred year to date in the capital in terms of general capital, water capital, and ward capital. But we are projected to spend some by year end, but there are certain areas, of course, where we expect by year end, due to the ongoing planning processes taking place, that we will see some savings. There in some of the capital projects, there are significant lead time required to plan projects. So as a result of that lead time, we're expected that some of the capital projects that were projected to be spent in 2021 will be underspent in a number of areas. For example, the Midden Road overlay, the multi-use MRN path, the universal water meters, the leak detection for Tatlow. So you can see that there's some significant projects that may not get on track, finished in 2021. And so any monies left over from capital would of course be, if the project is still ongoing, would be carried forward to the following year. So overall, the village is on track to meet its budget targets. And that is a positive thing. And staff, including Lorna and Stuart, do look at the financial statements monthly, and will continue to monitor the financial results as we proceed throughout the year. There is a recommendation in the report, and I'm going to stop the screen sharing right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. And let's go to council. Thank you, Ken. Let's go to council first for any questions. Any questions on council? Let's go to, we'll move out to the audience then. Joe Elworthy. Welcome.
Yes, thanks for that report. And perhaps this is not a question, but it certainly jumps off the pages that the water usage dropping as considerably as it has. And I don't expect our chief financial officer to answer that question, but I'm sure council must really desire some sort of analysis as to why that might likely have been. It seems an unusual direction for it to move. So just something that's for consideration. I don't expect you have the answer to that tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And we'll keep that in mind, and staff can contemplate it too, and maybe we can come back another time. Okay. Thank you. Anybody I'm not seeing anybody with any other questions. So I'm going to go back to council, and we have a motion there that would be appropriate to be moved. So looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Clark moving, Councillor
And I'll
Wilder
second to receive the report.
seconding it, that the report title 2021 budget variance report based on results to June 30, 2021 be received for information. Any further comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and I'll note that
Aye.
it carries in the affirmative and that it is unanimous. Okay, so Ken. thank you very much for your work on that. And you came precariously close to no questions from anyone, but Joe's was a good one, so broke the streak.
Okay,
So thank you. So I think that's good. Thank you very much, Ken.
okay, thank you. I'm gonna leave the meeting now.
Yeah, I didn't need to give you the drill, right? Thank you for
No.
being here. Much
Okay.
appreciated with your work. Okay. And we have Chris Boyd will provide the next report, 5.4.
Thank you, Worship. I'll keep this one relatively brief. So I was this is following on from the previous council meeting with regards to some of the cat's eye installation along the major road network there. So in conjunction with the review with Stuart and staff, we found that some of the cat's eyes aren't quite installed as per spec. And so we're working with the contractor to rectify those. So that'll happen. That's no cost to the village. That's just something that's on the contractor to fix. But just the one thing that I would note is that it is a bit of a fine line when you install cat's eyes with regards to how deep you mill the pavement, which means removing like that groove from the pavement of the roadway. You got to be careful that you don't take too much for two reasons. One, if you take too much, you won't be able to see the cat's eyes. It won't reflect the light that enters them. And then the other one is you got to be careful that you don't puncture through the asphalt as well, because the pavement strength is directly related to the thickness of the asphalt. So if you go too deep, what you'll end up doing is causing potholes in your roadway. So there's always a bit of a fine line on those things. But in speaking with Scottish Line Paint, the contractor who did it, it seems like they've kind of had a quick review and an agreement that some of these need to be rectified. So they're going to be coming out at an opportunity here to fix them. That's it. Short and brief, just like me.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thanks for working with Stuart on that. Any questions from council? Okay, any questions? Carolina Clark, you have a question. I think your hand's up, correct?
No, please go ahead to the audience first. I just have a comment later and I'll do it afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to I was on the move to the audience, so let's have a quick check. Anybody in the audience? And I'm not seeing anybody, so I'll come back to Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Ross, and thank you for the verbal report to the chair, to Chris. So I just have, well, first my comment is that that's good news that this will be done free of charge. Some of them will be fixed free of charge. And I hope we can see this on the minutes for next meeting, because this is it's a question that pops up from time to time from residents, and it would have been great to have a written report on this just for clarity and so people could see on the agenda rather than a verbal report, because sometimes I find that that a verbal report you would have to watch the meeting to see that, and because it's being brought up, at least to myself, many times, it would be good to see that. And I guess I have a question through the chair to Lorna. So Lorna, is this project? So I see the engineer, Chris. It's now taking care of this as well. Was that before just with Public Works, and now it's going to the engineer for some help with this, or how's that working?
Well, Chris and Stuart work together on many related projects like this. So
Okay.
this is just one of the things that they have worked together on. They work together on many public works matters when it's needed.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, it's good news for me. I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, and thanks for the report. That was great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. So we're back to council right now. Any further comments? Then I think that we would move that the verbal report from Chris Boyd, engineering consultant, ISL Engineering, regarding cat's eyes installation be received for information. Councillor.
So moved.
Great, moving. Second. We have a councillor seconding it?
I did, Mayor Russ, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just, I didn't catch any second hand. So it's on the floor right now. Any discussion? Further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I would note that it carries in the affirmative and it's unanimous. Okay,
Thank you.
and then we have Lorna will outline the next report.
Yes, your worship, this is the amendment to the council procedure bylaw, which is being brought back for second reading. At first reading, council did make an amendment to the bylaw to add item F. And that is that the mayor or whoever is chairing the council meeting be granted the authority to consider if a question or comment from a member of the public is appropriate to be raised in a regular council meeting. For example, a matter of litigation or personnel or other topics that are included in the community charter section 91 and 2 as council meeting topics that may or must be closed to the public. So that has also been added to the bylaw prior to second reading, your worship.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments. So it is on the floor right now, and you will look to get a mover and a seconder and then go Councillor Drake moving and Councillor seconding, Councillor Snell. I caught your hand. Thank you. So it's on the floor. And Bruce, did you want to open up on discussion?
No, happy to see the addition and happy to see it moving along.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Councillor Drake. And let's go out to the audience, see if anybody in the audience has a question on this. Seeing none. So I've just a question. I understand that I was on a meeting with two of the ministers, and the municipal affairs minister spoke that there would be information coming out in terms of some of the things that had happened during COVID that would be looked to be preserved for councils being able to do it. So Lorna, you're aware, I know you're aware because we spoke, it's coming out at some point. So we expect it to come out roughly for that September period, which would still give us a chance to see what it says and see if there's any parts that we would look to pick up or council would look to pick up.
That's correct. And then in that event, we may further amend the procedure bylaw.
Yeah. So the timing is probably quite fortuitous. It'll come then later on. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions from council. I'm not seeing any questions from the audience. So I will call the question that's on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I will note that it is the affirmatives carry and it's unanimous. Okay. So we are on now to item 5.6. Lorna will provide the next report, please. Thank you.
Yes, your worship, there have been questions by residents and council members with regard to where the responsibility lies when there is noise on water. And this is a response that has been received from Corporal Raymer, who is the Coquitlam RCMP Corporal for the Rural Division. And I'm going to read what he wrote. As indicated below, the Canadian Coast Guard would be the first point of contact for marine emergencies. As far as calls for service related to unsafe boating, the Coquitlam RCMP should be the first call, as the RCMP are the police force for the jurisdiction. The Vancouver Police Department Marine Section would be unlikely to respond to complaints in the area of Belcara unless there was an urgent safety concern. With regard to noise complaints involving noise coming from the water and creating an issue for people on land, this problem does not currently have an easy solution. Corporal Raymer is unaware of any enforceable legislation which empowers police to deal with loud noise on the water. He has consulted with the Port Authority and the Vancouver Police Department Marine Unit, and they have experienced the same issue. Municipal noise bylaws do not extend onto the water. The RCMP may perhaps use other legislation, for example, the Canada Shipping Act, Safety Equipment Check, to address noisy boats, but the noise itself cannot be directly dealt with. And he's provided the RCMP non-emergency number, which is 604-945-1550. And so unfortunately, that is the response about noise on the water. And that's the end of my report, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Would you mind just for people repeating that number, and would we be able to get it up on our site tomorrow? Or
For sure.
yeah, thank
So
you.
the RCM, the
Non-emergency?
RCMP Rural Division, not, or actually for the whole
Yeah.
RCMP in Coquitlam, the non-emergency number is 604-945-1550.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go to council, and I have Councillor Clark first, then Councillor Drake. Councillor Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I guess this would be a question to Lorna through the chair. Would it be possible for us to put that update, what you just read right now, up on the website as an update from the village, maybe in a part of what to do when there's too much noise on the bay or on the water, so the residents can access that information with great facility. Thank you very much.
Certainly. Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Drake, please.
Thank you. And yeah, Carolina cited exactly what I was going to recommend. I also, it also appears to me that there's virtually nothing people can do with that noise. And at the moment, if there is no legislation, there's no basis to take any action for noise on the water. Or am I wrong on that, to Lorna through the chair?
Okay, go ahead.
I believe you are correct, Councillor Drake.
So if that is the case, I mean, other than disappointing them, I'm not sure what use. I mean, I think we should put the letter up, but it says is there's a gap there, obviously, and we have a rather unique situation in that most boats arrive in parts of our areas close to our village, and they're there to recreate, and they're not moving along. I mean, I hear enthusiastic boaters go by our place playing music, but they're gone in 5 seconds. They're not there for 3 hours. So I do sympathize with the people that are living with that, but it looks like the moment we have no basis on which to deal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drake, and Councillor Snell, please.
Yeah, thank you. There's two types of noise on the water. One is from loud music. The other one is from the unrestricted exhausts of a lot of the high-powered boats out there. If you read the Transport Canada Safe Boating Guide and you run through the list of infractions, running a boat without a silencer is in fact an offence, and with a fixed fine, just as a fixed fine for boating without a life jacket or not carrying your operator card and so forth. I would say that's a comment I would make there. And of course, any of those infractions can be dealt with by the same authorities that deal, with operating a boat without the proper equipment. So it's the same authority can act on the noise issue, or not so much noise, but on a boat without a silencer. The other point I would make and I think I've made it in the past, is that there are other municipalities that have in fact, especially on the island, have in fact been able to deal with noisy boats on the water through general noise bylaws. Now, whether in fact the difference is on lakes is treated differently from the ocean, I'm not sure, but I just throw that one out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. And I'm going to just add to the conversation and appreciate the previous councillors and comments. And thank you, Lorna, for bringing it up, because I think it's, we look to the RCMP for a lot of things. And I know when Corporal Raymer came out, he kind of foreshadowed that he wasn't sure about that he would check up on it. And so I've known him over the years, and he's good at following through on this. And I think he's given us, I guess, the sense that there's a challenge, and it may be found in some of the things, as John said, that you may be able to do, but it's not a clear cut that it's going to happen. But I will tell you, and it won't be a surprise because it's out there, there is going to be a federal election. So there is the ability for everybody on this call and everybody in the village of Belcarra to ask all the people that are running in the election about what they would do. One, are they aware of what happens in Bedwell Bay in particular and in other places around our community, and what they would look to do? I mean, there are things that can be done to solve this problem, but they can't be left with the police to enforce something that's not on the books. Okay, so, Bruce, you mentioned a disappointment. I think there is a disappointment, but the wonderful thing about elections is people get to ask questions about what people want to do. Okay, so I'll take my hand down now and see if there is any other speakers, and not seeing anybody in the audience and not seeing anybody on council, that we have a motion here that the verbal report from Lorna Dysart, Chief Administrative Officer, regarding response from RCMP regarding noise on from the water be received for information. Okay, moved.
So moved.
Councillor Clark.
Second.
Seconding it. So it's on the floor. Any further discussion from council? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll note that the affirmatives carry and it's unanimous. Okay, we'll go to item 5.7, and Stuart will provide the next report. Stuart, thank you.
Your worship, could we just have a short recess before we start this? Sorry.
Sure, we absolutely can. I had it down for 9, but let's take an
Okay.
early one, and let's who's gonna help me out? How much time do we need? Lisa, how much time do we need tonight?
8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay. It's 8 minutes, we're on. Go.
I'm still nursing my burnt hand.
Yeah, and I want to thank staff in advance of this. They've been at this a long time today, so we'll take an 8 minute, and everybody else just kind of stand down, and at 8 minutes, my little thing will ring, my phone, and we'll come back.
That'd be 9 o'clock on the dot.
9 o'clock on the dot. Okay, we'll have to get that in quick. Thank you. 8 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, 8:50
My
on the
hand is
dot, your
I've been
worship.
having it on ice this whole time.
Yeah, I think we're a bit early, aren't we? So,
What did
I think it
you
was
do?
7 minutes after I said.
okay, we'll go 8 minutes right now. Bang. Okay. Thank you.
Lisa, what did you do?
Oh, we had dinner on the dock, and I went to move my barbecue off the dock onto my boat, and it was hot and burned my hand.
Was that today? Oh,
And I burned the crap out of my hand.
oh no. You've done that. This is the second time you've done
I should
that.
have left it.
You did that a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I tell Nora.
I did. That was on a friend's boat where
This is what I tell Nora.
I didn't know he had a barbecue on. I just leaned on it, and that was my right hand. But this one, so look at what I've been sitting on all night long. You see my jug of ice water here? My hand has been my jug of ice water all night long like this. All night.
Well, this is what
My fingers are blistered. My fingers are absolutely blistered.
you know what I tell Nora?
What?
There.
There. Look at me. Look at me. I've got ice buckets. I've got ice things. Look at my ice pack here. I've got my ice pack. What a stupid thing to do. Oh, God. Well, the kids were having such a great time down on the dock, and I thought, oh, they're just paddleboarding and swimming and kayaking. We just brought hot dogs down for them. And I said, I'll just throw the barbecue on for them, and instead of feeding them all up here. And then I was kind of in a hurry to rush off, and I picked the barbecue up, and
Ouch.
that was a dumb thing to do. Remember last week, and I said, oh, Peter, I didn't pick up the barbecue. It was
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah.
Did it today, and I shouldn't have. And all night long, here's my bucket of ice water.
Yeah.
Graham brought my my ice has just melted. Oh my gosh.
You
Hey,
have it?
Sherry Chisholm. Hi. You were had kudos earlier in the
muted.
evening and you missed it. We had the
what did I
Fortis BC
miss?
people here, and well, you missed having kudos because Jamie acknowledged you bringing gas into the village. We had Fortis
Oh.
BC. Yeah,
Aw, yeah, I tuned
I
in late.
know.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's too
good.
bad. That's too bad. Anyways, but you know what? You were still acknowledged. So
That's nice. That's good to know.
yeah. Hi, Deborah Struck.
Hey, Deborah.
Hello, you guys. Oh, Lisa, I'm so sorry about your hand.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that hurt.
I don't know,
I know.
if
Look
the
at me.
ice will do
There's
much
my ice
good
bucket.
now. I think it's too late.
There it is.
You should get some aloe vera.
Well, I've been having ice on it since it happened, and it's now just sitting in cold water, and it's getting
Yeah.
better, but it's still stinging when it comes out. And this happened about 7 o'clock. So it's been like over an hour and a half. I know.
And the blisters will be lovely in the morning.
Oh my God, you should see the end of my fingers. Every one of them.
I hope that's just water
It
in
was
there,
stupid.
Jamie.
It was just a stupid thing to do. Anyway. Oh, hey, there's Jamie there. Just to Sherry how you gave her kudos about being
Yeah.
one of the frontiers of the gas in here.
Sherry's
Oh,
got
she's thrilled that you
gas.
did that. Sherry got gas.
Yeah, Sherry got gas.
Yeah. Anyways, I got 3 more minutes, so I'm just gonna go grab some more ice cubes for my little bucket here. I'll be right back. I'm
Bye, Lisa.
mute and
Yeah, can't hear you anymore. No.
I thought the rules were we all had to show our beautiful faces. How come everybody's hiding out?
I'm here.
I thought you would notice me right away, Sherry. How you doing?
Good.
Were you on earlier before?
No, I wasn't, but I heard that I was given my due credit for having gas.
Well,
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
yeah, I guess that could be the headline, right?
Yes, Sherry got gas.
Yeah.
That was a few years ago.
That was, but I didn't forget, right?
No,
Yeah.
I got you out of the bathtub to get your signature.
That's right.
Yes.
That was good.
Yeah, that was one of my more memorable signatures.
Yeah. Now I'm really remembering it. I remember
What,
some
Sherry,
other
say
things.
getting him out of the bathtub?
Yeah, well, I needed 4 more signatures, like overnight, I was told.
Yeah.
And so the ones I hadn't collected, I hounded.
You would be impressed, Sherry, at the number of clients they say they have. Like they were citing
Hey,
2.
we're on.
Yeah,
That's exceptional.
yeah, yeah, they did really well in the village.
Well, I think that was really nice that Jamie acknowledged you tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot of hard work, but it really paid off for everybody in the village.
Yeah, it did. And
Well,
she was.
you're a pioneer, Sherry.
Yep,
Yeah.
I certainly feel like one.
Well,
Let's
gl-
move on.
I'm glad you're here. I let her know because I thought you'd be here. And then when you weren't, I said you got time off too.
Yes, that's right.
But welcome. Okay.
Good
And the
on.
timer just went. So
Back to business.
yeah, if that's okay, and a nice little chat with people and a chance to get a little break. And Stuart, you're on our 5.9,
Thank you, Your Worship.
please.
Recommended that managing trees, views, and landscapes bylaw number 589, 2021 be read for the first time. The proposed bylaw was brought to council previously, but sent back to staff to address further concerns and meetings with the tree committee. As a result of the changes implemented, some of the changes, I should say, that were implemented as a result of the meetings include entering language into the bylaw allowing residents to reapply at no charge to maintain previously pruned trees that were taken out with a permit previously. Also, additional language in the bylaw stating that permits may be taken out in order to improve views. Minimum and maximum penalties of $1,000 and a maximum penalty of $10,000, as well as working with BC Hydro to improve their tree cutting policies within Belcarra's jurisdiction. Previous meetings that we had way back are still on the table, and they include things like all tree committee definitions were entered into the bylaw document. The permit application was put into Schedule A of the bylaw. Clear terms and conditions in the permit application itself. And having said that, there still are some issues that are not included, but they're pending Blackwell's Fire Smart report, and hopefully if this gets passed through first reading and hopefully through, I'm anticipating that we would amend the bylaw after that, pending the Blackwell report in November. Your Worship.
Okay, good. Thank you, Stuart. And I'll go right now if I can. We'll start off with council, and we have Councillor Clark, who was the liaison with this committee. So if you'd like to go first, that would be great. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ross. Through the chair, big thanks to Stuart to work on this. The report, I feel that the report right now really captures what the committee was trying to do. So I'm really, really happy to see that. With that, I do have a few comments, and so I'll start with the first one. Dumping clippings on municipal land. I feel that that should be part of this bylaw, along with the fines. I don't know if this is part of another bylaw. I'm not sure, but I feel that it should be captured here. And the reason for that is that when you're looking for rules and regulations about trees, I think it would be good to have that listed on the bylaw as well, so we have sort of everything in the same place, even if it's part of another bylaw. Another feedback that I would love to see there, it would be, and that was a recommendation from the committee as well, the map for the sensitive areas, so riparian zones and all around. I think that would be good to include that on that bylaw, so it's very clear again to everybody, and especially to people that don't you know, that are reading this for a first time. It becomes very clear there's no room for errors, and so I think that would be a good call. The third thing, I think dangerous trees on private property. I know the committee has agreed on not touching on that subject on private property or have any sort of regulations at the moment on private property, but it would be good to have that listed in the bylaw on what would be, because I understand there's some steps that could be taken, you know, contacting the fire department and things like that. And sometimes in the past I've seen happening when there's a concern about a dangerous tree on private property, perhaps, you know, the village could send a letter, like I've seen in the past, saying that there's that concern, even though there's nothing that the village would do in that case. Now, another feedback that I have, and I'll probably bring an amendment for some of those, but especially for this one, under item 8.5 on application for permit, it says that an applicant may reapply to prune or trim the same tree on an annual basis for no additional charge. The original application approval must be presented to the municipal staff and receive an updated stamp of approval. I have a few concerns about that item. First is that, for instance, if you live on Marine Avenue and you need an arborist report to do some trimming on municipal land on sensitive areas on Marine Avenue, I don't know if arborist report would have an expiration date. So my concern with that, with this being worded that way, is that let's say it's 2020, you get an arborist report for a specific tree, and it says, okay, you could delimit that tree and cut some branches off to improve the view and safety or whatnot. But you know, the way this is worded to me, it seems that 10 years down the road, let's say we're talking about a 2020 report, if you go on like in 2030, the person would still be able to do trimming with that one report that was done 10 years ago. So a few concerns is that a lot of the trees, especially on Marine Avenue or any sort of bank, specifically also to the environmental sensitivity of the area, a lot of those trees help hold the bank up. And you know, like you see, like if you drive over or walk in some parts of Marine, that's parts that the road is pretty much giving out. And that's something that you know, it's a conversation for another day, but that's something that council should start looking at, because this could cost us big bucks in the future to fix it. I personally, I don't know if the rest of council feels that way, but I personally don't feel that that this would be in the best interest of the community, quite frankly. I think it's important for us to come up with a solution that wouldn't be as bureaucratic as it is right now, for instance. But at the same time, I don't think grandfathering, let's say, a report from an arborist from 10 years ago would be very wise in that sense, because again, those trees help hold the bank. And we need to think about, you know, about the safety of the road as well, right? We don't want the road giving out. You know, a tree that right now it's not considered danger could be considered dangerous in 10 years down the road. So you might need another report then to make sure where can you cut on that tree, or if that tree needs to be cut completely on its entirely. Again, I'm not looking to make the process more bureaucratic, but I also and since I am sensitive to the fact that that it would be hard to be grandfathering the same application for years down the road. My third comment would be when we had that meeting with the tree committee bylaw, it was myself, Mayor Ross, and the tree committee bylaw. One of the ideas that I came up with that the committee really liked it at the time is the fact that I said, okay, so in order to give everybody quite a bit of time to read through the bylaw, give feedback to council, would be good to have that coming to council for when it comes back, like as of now, coming to council for information right now, and then do the first reading, second reading, and therefore until adoption on the meetings after that. So I will be moving a motion tonight to receive this thing for information tonight and give the first reading on the next meeting. So then, there's no meetings during August. There will be plenty of time for people to take a look at the bylaw and see the feedback that it will get from public on it, and any additions that people feel that should be there, any feedback. So I think it would be I would like to stick with that proposition that I made to the committee back on that meeting, to receive this for information now and defer the first reading to the first meeting of September. This is it for me for now. Thank you. And I know it was a lot. I threw a lot at you right now, so sorry.
Okay, thanks very much. And then I have Stuart, please go ahead. And then I've got, just to give the lineup, Councillor Snell and then Councillor Drake. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just would like to respond to the one concern that Carolina brought forward, and that is with respect to the trees in sensitive areas, like Marine Avenue. The bylaw states that the processing will be free. That's why that you're going to have to bring in the information. We'll have to review the information and still consider all issues. And what you're citing is in a perfect example of a condition where we would have some concerns ourselves, even though the person wouldn't be paying for a new permit. That may require additional input from a qualified environmental consultant.
If I may reply to that, Mayor Ross?
Yes, you may. I just was having a look at it, but you go ahead.
Okay, so through the chair to Stuart, so I don't need to be concerned about that with the wording as it is right now, or should we, do you think, Stuart, that it would be wise for council to put something in the sense of up onto CAO, leave this sort of up to the CAO, or should it stay as it is? There's no concerns about grandfathering something that's from years before, and the tree might be in a different situation right now, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, I should have worded that better.
Okay, go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, anyways, there is a fair amount of language where it states that the superintendent would do a site visit on virtually all the permit applications. And so I'm not personally worried about needing to clarify the document, just because there is language in there already that advises that. And, once again, there is also a lot of concern brought forward about keeping the document simple. At the same time, we're building this document larger and larger every time it gets put forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry, Mayor Ross.
No, why don't you go ahead and respond, and then I'd like to respond to that too, just from the reading of this. So go ahead, Councillor.
So that is good enough for me for now. I guess, yeah, this is a great concern of mine, because again, like, it could cost everybody a lot of money to fix the road if you do something really wrong there, that it would affect the tree, for instance, that's holding the bank or a part of the bank. And that's where I'm coming from, thinking about long-term sort of thing. And I do agree. Thank you for noting. Yeah, we want to do, I think that the one of the first goals of the committee was to do something that's easy to read, simple to understand for anybody that could get in and start reading through the bylaw. So I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
So let me just respond to that because, and that's why I had my head down when you were talking, Carolina. I think, and I'm just going to say this for staff, I would like staff to go away and read carefully 7.1 professional assessment prior to the issuance of a permit, the village at its discretion, and then read that coupled with an applicant may reapply to prune or trim the same trees on an annual basis for no additional charge. The original application must be presented to the municipal staff and receive an update stamp of approval. So I would like staff to go look at 7.1 and 8.5 and consider it, and then come back at the next meeting and give us their thoughts on that interpretation. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Snell, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Clearly, there's a lot of work has gone into this this report, and I'm quite comfortable in accepting the first reading. I'm reading between the lines. There's obviously the second reading and the third reading would be done well after we've had the report from Blackwell and Associates, and I would anticipate that Blackwell would likely identify hazard trees wherever they are, but whether they be on municipal land or on private property. When I go through the report this evening, I've circled the number of times the word buffer zone has been written, and I think as we've seen from villages that have been incinerated, that a wildfire doesn't differentiate between private property or municipal property. So before I would support a second or third reading, I believe that the bylaw should apply to all property within the village, not just trees on municipal land. I stand firm behind that position that if we're going to sort of try and deal with this issue, then it should be on everything within the village boundary. And I think there are others that would probably agree with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Snell. Councillor Drake?
Yes, thank you very much. I think taking that on private property will be a challenge, and obviously John and I will have different views on that. But I mean, can I make application to have a tree cut on my neighbor's property? Are you saying, John?
I would. Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Yes, I would. I don't think that's unreasonable. Everybody in this village has spent the last year safeguarding their own health and their neighbours' health by following all the COVID rules. And here's another example where one is, with a little bit of diligence, can be protecting your own property and also your neighbour's property. I've not seen too much evidence of people in this village going around following fire smart recommendations, and I don't know why not. I've seen one or two that have been doing it, but not widespread following. So how can we expect, the respect and the response from people if we're not prepared to do something to protect ourselves? We will be at loggerheads on this one, because I truly believe that we should be getting rid of all the hazards within the village, wherever they are in the village. Thank you.
And I appreciate while you're at loggerheads that you're going through the chair. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No problem.
No, I just wanted, that was good. So, Rick, you still have the floor.
If I may, through the chair, it's, I appreciate the work that's been done. This is a significant improvement in my view. One concern I had when I saw the hazardous tree designation, so it's on the first page, Stuart, so the tree has to be determined by a registered certified arborist to present a hazard to the safety of persons. One of the things I've always been in favor of with respect to trees on public land is the capacity. It's great to use an arborist when we think we have the time, but I've always felt that Public Works should be able to remove a tree that it judges to be hazardous in virtually real time. And you're down, I see that under exemptions. So 5.1, be assessed and removed as deemed necessary by the Public Works Department. Now, just to be clear, it looks from the definitions as though you'd have to have an arborist designated as hazardous. And I appreciate that's desirable 99% of the time. But if you judge something to be unsafe, do you not have the discretion to simply remove it? Sorry, through the chair, I'm asking Stuart if that's his understanding of
Yes.
discretion.
Stuart,
Yeah, thank you,
you
Your
could-
Worship.
thank you.
Yeah, as you see in the procedures, and it is common for the Public Works Superintendent to go view all hazardous trees. And if they're on village property, they will be removed. They will be put in on the list and removed by the superintendent. I think where the issue came forward is because it was requested that I put all the information or all the definitions from the tree committee into the document. Originally, I didn't have that there. And so that's where the issue came in. And yes, I believe it should be amended just slightly.
Yeah, I just suggested under the definition of hazardous tree, you might just add, except as referenced under 5.1, right? So that the normal course of event is that we would use an arborist, but obviously you would apply common sense where it was an exceptional case, in your opinion.
Okay.
My second question is, and I do appreciate the work you're doing as well as the committee, because these are like trees are involved. This sort of thing can go on forever, and I do appreciate that it's a little different world when we're looking at the kind of heat wave we've got and the stress that evergreens are under. But one of the issues that is always produced problems in the past with respect to trees is the issue of neighbor consultation. And I appreciate that the tree committee itself, I got the impression they had the view that was one of the insurmountable barriers to having trees trimmed. And so, yet I find here in this version, the reference of an affected neighbor is fairly broad, and I appreciate it may be tough to do anything else. And it's not clear to me who will decide when enough neighbors have been consulted, given on the location of the tree. So there's room for 2 to sign here, I see. There's no room for them to comment. But if it's a tree that's in the viewscape of 4 or 5 homes, I'm afraid I can almost guarantee 1 or 2 are going to be unhappy. That doesn't mean they get their way, just that I think they should, as a minimum, be consulted and have the opportunity to express their views. People often confuse that with having a veto. It's not a veto. It's an opportunity to express your views. Recognizing there's no easy answer to it, Stuart, can I, through the chair, ask if you, is your intention to limit this, or are these just examples that you might have to attach additional cases you might decide more were necessary, given that the tree was obviously in the full viewscape of several homes?
Through the chair to Stuart, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was recommended by the tree committee. We originally had 4, the number of 4 neighbors, and it was recommended by the tree committee to reduce that number. So we reduced it accordingly. And I do believe there's still language in there, or in the procedures of possibly taking, a dispute like that to for council's discretion.
Yeah, here I'm putting up hypothetical problems, but I guarantee you're going to get them once we start trimming trees. And so we say that an affected neighbor, it seemed to me it was a fairly broad definition. Because as I recall in the past, we actually had a tighter one. It was just based on proximity to the tree. But now they're saying anybody for whom it's part of their view. Sorry, I'm looking for an affected property owner, including but not limited to any direct property owner whose line of sight or proximate enjoyment, and then with a whole series of conditions, might be affected. So if I'm not consulted and I am upset and I do say it's in my line of sight, The only response is to say you should have paid attention because there was a notice on the tree. Is that right? Is there going to be a note on the tree indicating that it's subject to being trimmed?
All those procedures are still in place, yes.
Okay. Because my only other observation will be that if we only need 2 signatures and I want to cut a tree on public land, I'll find 2 neighbors who think it's a great idea. Whether the other 3 or 4 think it will be another matter, but there's no easy answer to this. So I appreciate the progress that's been made and look forward to further discussions as we refine it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Drake and Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ross. So just, I guess, a couple of points here. First, to Councillor Drake's concern about extending to more people, the feedback on tree trimming. That was something that the committee spoke about extensively. The committee felt at that point that that extending so far out would be a bit too much, and trying to simplify just to direct neighbors of the property that is applying for an application for trimming trees. So that's where that came from. And to Councillor Snell's concerns about the buffer zones, I will say this, it's, in a perfect world, it would be good to have those buffer zones for obvious reasons, when there's a fire and you're concerned about the fire jumping from property to property. In Belcarra, well, first I'd like to say that during the committee, one of the committee meetings, that was brought forward, and the committee actually took a vote, and it got turned down of doing anything or trying to enforce anything of this type or any different regulations on private property. And the reason why the committee voted that way is because, well, first, because we have a lot of trees and, and there's not a concern like big cities have as of, oh, we don't have enough trees to create shade and all that. I mean, we're surrounded by regional parks. But the other thing too about the buffer zones, again, although it would be great to have them, I would be concerned of financial hardship for many of the neighbors. As we all know, or if you ever had to hire an arborist or a company to come take down a tree, this is extremely, extremely expensive. Sometimes you can pay up to $6,000 to remove one single tree. And if we were to try to go around at this point to tell neighbors that, hey, you cannot have a tree within, let's say, 20 feet of your property or 10 feet from a neighbor property, I mean, that would affect a lot of homeowners. I would find very difficult to enforce something like that and make people pay big bucks. If you look at the properties all around, I mean, there's some properties that have no trees at all, usually the newer ones. And I guess it would be something that would be easier to enforce going forward rather than going back to the existing properties and trying to do that. Maybe upon a new building application, you could try to do something like that. But I would certainly not be in favor, because of the reasons that I already said, to go after those owners and get them to cut those trees. There's a number of reasons why some people have the trees. Some of them, it's like, oh, they want extra shade or they want more privacy between properties. And to be fair too, this is something that you could do whatever you want on private land, and you could create these buffer zones in the future. But the fact is, some of our private properties are so close to park boundaries, and we can just create zones, buffer zones on park property or crown land, right? It would be the perfect world. We would have like a 10-meter buffer zone between the park and the private property, so the fire would have a harder time jumping from private property to the forest, and have the risk of becoming a wildfire. So I just see a lot of problems on trying to enforce something like that with the existing properties. It would be maybe a better idea to wait for that report on the fire smart and see what they have to say. And if council wishes to do something about that, maybe do something going forward with new building permits rather than the existing property owners. It would be really hard. Imagine, like, if you have a neighbor that has like 20 trees, that's within this buffer zones, and you want them to take all those 20 trees out. I mean, you could create unnecessary litigations on this. So I would find hard to support something like that at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. So we have we've got Bruce, you're on again, but we've got Deborah Struck ahead of you. So if it's all right with you, I'll go to Deborah Struck and kind of mix this up a bit and then come back to you, Bruce. Okay?
Happy to wait, thanks.
Okay, Deborah, welcome.
Hi there, thanks. It's wonderful to see this coming forward because there was a lot of hard work put into it, and thank you to Councillor Clark for all that she had done. To Bruce Drake's comment, I as well found that wording around the neighbors, affected neighbors, because I think when we were discussing it on the committee, we talked about directly, the neighbor directly beside, behind, and that's it. We were getting feedback from residents talking about issues previously where they were applying to have a tree on municipal land trimmed for their view, but there were people that lived on a totally different street, but they didn't like that tree, and so they were able to go and have it stopped. That's the kind of thing that we don't want to have happen. So that's just my comment with regards to the language, and our intent was whoever is directly affected on either side and behind, and leaving it at that. And I don't really know how you could change the wording to have it so it's not so vague. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Deborah. Bruce, and then we'll go to Sandra, please.
Thank you. Yeah, and I look forward to hearing from Sandra. And I do appreciate all the work that's been done here. This is not an easy topic. The backdrop I'm using is a view off our deck. And as I mentioned to some people who felt I was terrified about a possible sale of waterfront property, that tree and the removal of it would be the only impact on my view if, in fact, that road allowance were ever sold. Simply because of the slope of the land and the fact that our house is back near the back of the property and built higher than you could build it today per the code. So, but in this case, so that tree, which does impact a portion of our view, is not on my property. It's not on my neighbor's property. It's on a road allowance. So it's like 2 lots beyond my property. If I'm the one that wants to have that cut down, then it seems to me that people that are closer to that tree than I am, as a minimum, should have a chance to comment. And so, look, I appreciate there's no easy solution to this, but emphasizing that the fact that somebody objects doesn't mean they'll get their way. It's not a guarantee they're going to get their way. I still think you want to be very careful that people, in this case of that tree, there are 5 property owners who are closer to that tree than I am. And for some of them, maybe it's a thing of great beauty, and I can assure you you'll run into that in some of these cases. So it's not easy, and I'll leave it there, just saying, and I appreciate the frustration people have who want to cut. I don't think it should be an unlimited number of consultations. And frankly, I think the old rule we had was, I don't know, 2 properties, 3 properties in any direction from the tree. And in most cases, people didn't even bother to comment. They got the opportunity, but they didn't. And the only ones you'd hear from are those who really couldn't care less, and those who were horrified at the thought that anything would be trimmed off that beautiful thing. So there's no easy answer to this, and I appreciate the effort being made by the committee. It's a very tough call. One thing, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned earlier. I don't see anything in this, and I may have missed it, but nothing that reflects the concern around the riparian zone other than what Councillor Clark cited in terms of ensuring, of course, that those trees remain able to help stabilize that bank. So is that the case? So a tree growing in the riparian zone on Marine, for example, does it get any special consideration, or just, I would think as a minimum, it should get the consideration that Councillor Clark cited, that it not be jeopardized in terms of its health. And I say at the same time, I am very sympathetic with people whose views of the water are impacted by trees over there. Again, you can see my backdrop.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drake, and we will go to Sandra Chapman. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Ross and Council. I really appreciate the the report as well. It's very comprehensive. Regarding the number of people to be consulted when pruning or removing a tree, that came from an experience that a neighbor had where he had to consult 6 neighbors and one actually had the power to veto it and everybody else was okay with it. So we were trying to minimize that outcome. Removing the power of veto was an important item. So if we wanted to increase it to 6, but removing the power of veto, where if, then the village has to judge how many people are okay with it and how many are not. I think that's really the best solution for that one. And then regarding the grandfathering of pruning, I think my committee will disagree with me greatly on this one, but I'm speaking as an independent person here. I think one of the other items that needs to be considered is if your neighbor changes. If you had your neighbors agree, or people who were in view of that tree agree that it was okay to prune and keep it to a certain trimming, what if that property sells? Does that new neighbor not get a voice? So I think that is something that needs to be considered. Everybody should have a voice. So I'm not totally 100% okay with grandfathering something in perpetuity. The other one, riparian zones, that was an item that stood out to me to be missing, sensitive areas. And that's why we had asked for a map to be provided, highlighting the sensitive areas where pruning, dumping, removal cannot occur without careful consideration. So that does need to be highlighted in our map. I know that we have identified 2 locations of sensitive areas within the language that I read in the report, but that tells me that there's other areas that are not being spoken about. So I would rather have a map, show exactly what's going on in each one of those areas, identify it by color, and that way we cover all of it and not just 2. And then the dangerous trees on private land, that one too stood out to me, as we know what to do when it's on public property. But I think we need to provide some information for residents as to what are their action items when it's on private land. Say that they've already approached their neighbor, they have identified the situation with the neighbor, whether the tree is dry and dead, which would make it fuel for fire, or whether it's leaning and it's going to affect their property or somebody else's property, and it's dying, then I think that the recourse of having the fire marshal come and take a look would be something that everybody should be aware that they can do that is a solution to help move it along for the removal of the tree, and at least documenting it that it's an issue, because if there is an under strong winds and the tree falls, insurance companies are very mindful to talk to neighbors if there's a documentation of the tree having been dead or something being wrong with that tree.
Okay.
And that's it.
I was just going to say thank you, Sandra, for your comments there. Much appreciated. And I am going to right now. I've got Deborah Struck and Bruce Drake. I now have Deborah Struck left that club. No, Deborah, are you still on to talk? Bruce, are you still on to talk?
Yes, I just very briefly, if I might.
Okay.
Yeah, first, I don't know where the story of a veto came from. I don't recall anyone ever having a veto over a tree being cut. you could get someone writing in saying it would be a terrible thing to cut that tree, and maybe it convinced council not to approve it. But it's not a veto. It's just, I mean, as I recall the cases that we had cases where you had, someone a long way from a tree wanting it cut. It affected a view. And then everybody between them and the tree objected. It was about 6 of them. Well, that was a no-brainer. It wasn't going anywhere. But in other cases, I mean, I don't know how many times I've explained to people who wanted to object to a tree that, one, they don't own it, it's on public land, and 2, they don't have a veto over it. I mean, we all naturally acquire a sense of ownership, I think, of public land close to us, but it's not, it doesn't grant you any special power. So I don't believe there ever has been a veto for anyone who's been consulted on trees. It wouldn't be a good idea if you were hoping to get one trimmed. It wouldn't be a good idea if you ran into several neighbors who objected, but I wouldn't be worried about one. And finally, I just want to reemphasize Sandra's point on a dangerous tree on a neighbor's property. From having talked to people in the insurance industry, she's absolutely right. There is a huge difference between a tree blowing down where nobody had ever said anything about it, and a tree blowing down where your neighbor had warned you in writing, especially if an arborist warned you in writing that it was unsafe. And you do not want to turn to your insurance company if you've been warned in writing by an arborist. So I think there are steps that we can take to minimize that risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. Sandra, just inquiring you, would you like to make a further comment? You have your hand still up.
Sorry, no, I was trying to figure out how to remove it.
Oh, okay. No worries. Welcome to the club. It's down under reactions, and it'll tell you to lower your hand, but don't worry, we'll just keep moving on. So thank you. So let's
Sherry.
Jim Chisholm or Sherry, go ahead.
Oh, hi. My concern is, I think on private property, it's going to bring a lot of litigation to the village and the neighbors and a lot of wars. I don't know if that's a good reason to stay out of it, but private property is kind of, private property. But I think, to me, the park it should be brought into this. And how will you manage any of trees with the park? There's a guaranteed 100-foot buffer zone treed where the park comes up against any property. Now, if we're going to change the rules and say we'd like that 100 feet swept clear in case of fire, or are we going to have any power to get the park to remove any of their dangerous trees? Or, seems like every winter at least one of them falls across the road and puts the power lines out. So, you're going to have trouble with villagers on private property, but you're going to have a bigger problem with the parks, I think. Anyways, that's my thought.
Okay, thank you very much, Sherry. And I have Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Ross. To Sherry's concern, just to make it clear to the public, we are not talking about, well, I guess councillors now brought up the buffer zone in between private property, but when we're talking about dangerous trees on private property, Sherry, we are not talking about enforcing anything. Okay, so the process right now, it's if someone identifies a dangerous tree on your neighbor's property, you can, there's a few things you could do. You could go to the village, talk to the village might send a letter, I've seen, again, I'm saying that because I've seen that happening in the past, saying, hey, that's a dangerous tree and, perhaps it should be removed. But the village, I'm not suggesting at all that the village would obligate the person to do so. So that's not being suggested, at least not for myself on that. I agree that private land is sacred, and we need to keep it, at least that's for myself. That's one of my principles, keep that to a minimum on what you try to enforce on private land. But there's other things you could do. You could go to fire marshal and say, listen, like this neighbor has this tree and this can come down, hit a power line or hit my house, kill people, who knows, right? And there's something that they could do there, take some actions about that one without the village having to really enforce anything. And yeah, and according to the park, so there is, it's good to note, I did ask Lorna to contact parks to see what could be done for residents that live by the parkland and identify a dangerous tree that could perhaps, again, fall on their property or on a power line and should be removed. On the website, you would find some information about that. There is someone you can contact on parks and tell them to come, and the resident could do that themselves. Tell them to come and take a look. I've seen parks doing that on some of the properties. On Bedwell Bay there, the ones that is right in front of the tennis courts. About 2 years ago, they came and they cut a few maple trees that was really dangerous to one of the properties there. And so they take care of that because they assessed and they found that, yeah, if it does fall, it might hurt somebody. So there is numbers that you could call, that the residents could call themselves. And it is on our website, all of those numbers. And as far as the 100 feet buffer zone between the parks, they might write this and that on their reports. But the fact is, if you look, for instance, here on Belcarra Bay, you see all the properties here on Belcarra Bay, right in front of it is parks. And that's not 100 feet buffer zone, right? It's just 30 feet, like just across the street. So, like, let's say you are here on Belcarra Bay on my side. So after the stop sign here towards Coombs Lane, there isn't 100 feet buffer between parks land and private land, right? Right in front here of my back gate, for instance, where the last bus stop in Belcarra is just a few feet to the parks land where there's a bunch of trees there, big trees. So, but yeah, just to make it clear again, there's a number that you could phone parks and try to get them to come and assess the dangerous trees.
But your land isn't, your land isn't near parkland.
Across the street from me, it's Jug Island, right? So it's just up the hill, Jug Island. Yeah, so if you see on my back gate here on Belcarra Bay at the last bus stop by Whiskey Cove, by actually the Cove Park, like that's parks land. It's not 100 feet from my house.
You mean the Divers Beach?
Yeah, the Divers Beach, like it backs out here to my house. And if you look across from Belcarra Bay from my property, it's not 100 feet buffer zone. So it would be great if it was, but that's not the reality for many of us.
Well, I thought that Dave Goodwin was across the street.
Sherry, if I could get, actually, Councillor Clark has the floor. I'd gladly put you on to pose questions through me. I don't want to cut off, but I'm just worried about us going cross. Okay. So if you'd like to light up, I'll certainly go to you after Councillor Clark. And then when I'm finished with that, I'm going to return to Councillor Clark as long as there's no other speakers. But if you'd like, you're up. So Councillor Clark, are you?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Rouse. Yeah, no, I think I made my points here. Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I'm not looking into touching any private land right now. And there is a number that you can call on parks and talk about the trees that's close to your house on parks land that you perhaps think it's a dangerous tree and should be removed. That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Sherry. You're next, and then we'll canvass, and if not, we're going to head back to Councillor Clark because I think she would like to do something in terms of this motion. But Sherry, please go ahead, and thank you for your help on that.
To my knowledge, wherever a house is butts the park, there is 100-foot tree buffer. I'm the one exception in the village.
Yeah.
I have the 66-foot road allowance. At the Divers Beach is the other side of Dave Goodman. So, either way, I just can't imagine that the park going to come in and assess. And to me, if there was a forest fire here, particularly, there's no space between us and the forest, the parkland. And I don't think they're going to scalp that for us. No. So anyways, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sherry. And we've had really appreciate the contributions from the members of the committee and other members of the public. And Councillor Clark, you indicated that you would like to, there's a motion that hasn't been moved yet, but if you're looking to move your motion, then you should probably put it forward now and see if there's a seconder for that. Okay? And
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ross. So again, during the conversations that we had with Mayor Ross and the tree committee, they really liked the idea of doing this as slowly as we can to get more feedback from the public and all that. So again, one of my suggestions was to, when this report comes forward to council, to take the report for information and do the first reading on the first reading of the bylaw on the next meeting. So I will move a motion to take this report for information right now and defer the first reading to our next meeting in September, to our first meeting in September.
Okay, so you're moving.
If I can get a seconder, yeah.
Yeah, you're moving that it be received for information. So you would then, by virtue of that, not have it be read a first time. So let's see at this point if there is someone to second that.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'll second that. Okay.
Okay. I'll put Councillor Drake. I think I heard his voice and I was looking at your hand. So we'll call it a tie to Drake. Okay. So it's on the floor for discussion.
And Mayor Ross, just for clarity, I would like to see that coming forward next meeting for first reading. It's just so we will give us one more meeting between the readings and more time for people to go through the bylaw,
Right.
the proposed bylaw. Thank you.
That's what I was like. That's what I was saying, that it was scheduled to be read a first time tonight, and this would vary that and it would come back to the next meeting. Okay, so it's on the floor for discussion. Anyone on council? Councillor Clark, did you want to say anything on that, or you're welcome?
No, sorry, Mayor Ross. No, I think I already made myself clear on this. So I'm ready to vote if nobody else has any comments.
Okay, any other councillors? Not seeing anybody in the audience? Not seeing anyone, then I'll look to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so it will be.
Thank you.
It will be received, and then it will come back on schedule at the next meeting with a recommendation to be read a first time. Okay, so it carries in the affirmative, and I would note that it's unanimous. Okay, so item 5.8 has been removed from the agenda as per our amendment, and we have we're now at 5.9, and so thank you, Stuart, for your work on the previous one, and you are up to provide the next report. 5.9, please, Stuart.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
One moment.
Yeah, take your time.
Stuart, your worship, the
Yes.
report will be put up on the screen since it was a late item.
Yep.
Okay, anyways, this is a report on the risk of wildfires and evacuation. It's as a result of 3 questions that were brought forward to council, asking questions about homeowners reducing the risk and a few other things. And as a result, I would like to I wrote down 3 items that we're actually working on right now. And I'm hoping that these answer what we're doing now will answer the questions that were brought forward, either hopefully directly or indirectly. So some of the actions that we're doing right now is working with Blackwell and Associates on creating a community wildfire resiliency plan. That's as a result of a $25,000 grant. Upon completion of that community wildfire resiliency plan, we hope to get recommendations of forest thinning and forest fire load reduction. These are all recommendations within the report. Fire smart recommendations for resident owners, recommendation for heights and density of trees and shrubs and clearings between houses, exit route information on exit routes, fire interface zoning for development areas like Fair Cove, recommendations for building bylaw adoptions for fire smart construction materials. That is that report is due at the end of November, and until this report is completed, we can't UBCM will not process any recommendations for forest thinning. So that's the reason why we haven't gone forward with that, because this community wildfire resiliency plan has to be completed first. The second thing that we're working on is this is part of that grant funding that is overseen by Coquitlam, up to $500,000. And it includes Anmore, Belcarra, Port Coquitlam, and Coquitlam, all receiving benefits from this, but managed by Coquitlam. And what we hope to get from this is they are hiring a fire smart coordinator. We will also hopefully benefit from public educators campaigning throughout the village to give recommendations for individual properties. And the third item is the meetings that we are currently having between the municipalities through the emergency program coordinators. We are actually going to be having a tabletop mock evacuation of Belcarra and more importantly. We hope to identify some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses. Once again, the main issues that we're trying to identify or trying to focus on are the reception areas and the communication that we're going to have between the emergency program coordinators, council, and residents as well. So right now we're working on mass evacuation, trying to identify the weaknesses, and also communication with residents, like early notification is one of the primary things on how we get the message out for evacuation to the residents, and then ensuring that the reception center is aware of exactly who has been evacuated and who is left within this municipality. Back to you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And we will look at starting with questions from council. Councilor Drake, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we dealt with some of this earlier today during a water committee meeting, which I'll speak about in a few minutes. I mean, I think they're all useful steps, and I think we all appreciate that there's a good deal of work to be done, particularly given that we are looking like the predictions of those who were worried about global warming are proving to be accurate, and we are looking at potentially having stressed evergreens in the areas around us. So just a point on the communication side, because I really think that's a critical piece of this, because every homeowner here, once there's a major fire started, really is going to have to decide whether they head to the water or try the roads. And if we don't have communication that tells people whether it's safe to get out on the roads, that'll leave a lot of people in a very difficult position. Easy problem to identify, hard one to solve. But yeah, the communications and tools for communications that would allow us to keep residents informed, in my mind, would be a key requirement. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. Any other members of council? Okay, Not seeing any, we will move out to the audience. And I think we're ready now to go back to council. So we have a motion that the report on the risk of wildfire evacuation dated July 19, 2021 be received for information. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please.
So moved.
Okay. Councillor Clark, you move. Councillor Snell, second. So any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call
I'll
the
second.
question. Oh, we've got a mover and a seconder. Thank you. But appreciate that just in case. So any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. And I'll
Aye.
note that it carries in the affirmative and that's unanimous. Stuart, thank you very much for your work on that. Appreciate that. And then we'll move into item 6 with reports from the mayor and council committee representatives. So I have 3 items on mine. The first one is that I know there's been some things done, Councillor Clark, in terms of something trying to work with Metro around the traffic issue and what we're facing. And I have been in touch with, spoke with TransLink further to be able to have some discussions around transit, cycling, walking, and a cooperative approach, but also more than that. So really looking at with TransLink that we have the, most municipalities are looking to bring services in and increase services for people. And what we're really dealing with is the inverse. We're dealing with the numbers of people that come during that summer season, but extending even into January where we had record numbers. So it's really key. And I was invited to a meeting to be able to talk about that. And TransLink is looking to do some things. And I'm looking to expand that because I think it's absolutely critical that the mayors and different parties, the landowners come together and talk about how we handle this problem collectively and how we do it together. And we can't simply partition off and say, this is our bailiwick and we're going to do this and it's up to you. That's an outdated approach to it. So I will look to, and without a doubt, there's personalities involved. So we're going to need to work in a way, but I wanted to let you know that that's one of the things that I've been working on from the metro region area and TransLink. I also wanted to just say that the Metro Vancouver 2050 plan, the draft, is there's opportunities to provide feedback. The key dates, it was released in June 2021, and there's feedback opportunities, including online feedback form, which people are able to get from November 26, 2021. And we will look at having that up. Paula will work with me and we'll get up the information, how you can get feedback. I also wanted to let you know that Metro will come out and make a presentation, and there'll be a chance for us to take a look at this 2050 plan together and then to be able to make comment. And then my final one, I wanted to, as I've done before, I wanted to recognize volunteers. And so tonight, it came up earlier that our guest speaker, she talked to me when she first phoned me and said, you have an amazing rate of people that are engaged with Fortis. And, council should be really proud. And of course, being a good mayor, I said, well, we are very proud. But beyond that, I would not be being accurate if I didn't recognize the work of Sherry Chisholm, who worked with the council at the time and the mayor, but did absolutely tremendous work. And I wasn't going to say in recognizing her that she got me out of the tub, but I think that that was probably the minimum of her wonderful efforts, because she actually pulled us together and kind of galvanized us as a community. And I know at the time, Mayor Drew and her worked very well together. And I think it set a foundation for how we engage. And it was, I still remember those, I think it was a chicken lunch that you arranged with them, Sherry, for at a Belcarra Day they paid for us, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, so I know you're not saying much and I don't want to embarrass you, but I really want to recognize you as a volunteer. And I think sometimes it's easy for the people that have been here for a long time and have really provided that foundation. So that's one of the things I wanted to recognize volunteers. So people that are new to the community have a chance to recognize the work that people put to build wonderful foundations for. So Sherry, I salute you as a volunteer. Thank you. And you are welcome, but not obligated. You're welcome to say anything, but you're not obligated.
I think Sherry and Jim.
Yeah.
That's very nice. And actually, they even donated a barbecue that we
Yes.
were able to raffle off. So Crab gained some dollars from that.
Yeah.
So they were pretty good.
Yeah, they were impressive. I think they grabbed their car keys to make sure they had the car when they went home. But anyway, thank you very
That's
much.
good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Lisa. You know, I would say without a doubt, people know that Sherry and Jim work together very closely. So on to, I'll relinquish to ask anybody else on a committee if they'd like to make any comments. And any comments, anyone? Okay, so let's go to item 6.4, and it's a late item, so we'll, is it available to go up?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
so we'll take a second, and then I'll ask Councillor Drake to outline the next item, please.
Yes.
Okay, so these are a series of motions that were made at the last council meeting. I would say behind these is really a reflection of the work that's been done by the Water Committee and interest on the part of the municipality to respond to the challenging situation we face with respect to, we faced already with respect to fire safety, but even more so now with the dry conditions that we're facing and that is working its way into other things we're considering. I don't think I want to go through these in detail. We waded through them on the Water Committee, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank those members of the committee, all of whom I think are here now tonight, for the work they've done. But these are really steps that are simply intended to document procedures that in many cases we're already following, but each of which is a modest step towards trying to reduce the risk of fire within the community. And I'll say, without asking him to go through it yet again to now, Stuart has indicated that he is working on each of these priorities. And there will be a set of operating procedures worked out with him, our engineer, and also in consultation with the Sasamet Volunteer Fire Department. Most of these fall into the category of things that operational staff take as a given that are there, but in some cases, whenever you have a problem, you can, well, if you've had the pleasure, and I've had several times, of dealing with a problem, a major problem, you find in walking your way back through how it happened that assumptions are almost always involved, that there have been situations where staff didn't realize their responsibility, or something that was assumed to be getting done wasn't actually getting done. And I'll use the sample of Dutchman's Creek. As I mentioned during the fire committee, the fire chief is quite happy to regale anyone who asks with their experience once, having tried to use that only to find that there was a lot of debris in the tank. It was pointed out by Stuart, and I'm sure quite correctly, that that's not rare, even with proper distribution systems. But in this case, the tank had been filled out of Dutchman's Creek itself, which, although we survived drinking the water for many years, it probably isn't a recommended standard any longer. So these, I appreciate the work that's going on. I think these are initiatives that we need to get documented and then move to take steps to either mitigate the problems or in other cases, simply ensure residents are aware of the challenges that the volunteer fire department would face in the event of a fire and thereby encourage them. Or perhaps we'll get to the point of requiring them to take cautionary measures such as the use of non-flammable material, use of roofs that won't burn and wall sidings that don't burn, because these are important steps as well as other items that we've mentioned earlier. I would like to, if I could, go on. I can save it till new business, but get on to the issue of the water committee itself. JB, if you're agreeable.
Yeah, no, I think that's more than appropriate.
One thing that we had discussed, and I'll mention it here for those of you who have been following, this committee was renewed to the end of July. And I think it's clear that there's ongoing work to be done. And so I'd like to recommend a move that a council extend the duration of this committee to the end of the calendar year. I know we have to revisit committees at the end of the year, so that's the longest we could do it, in the expectation that we will have ongoing work to do as we begin to bring some of these policies and practices into place, and hopefully, at long last, learn what the opportunities are with respect to the District of North Vancouver to improve our water flow here. So the motion I have, which I provided previously, would be, given the importance of the work it is contributing to and the priority council places upon improving our capacity to support the Sasamet Volunteer Fire Department, it's moved that the Water Committee's term be extended to December 31st, 2021. And this is new, and that consideration be given to updating the committee's terms of reference. So for staff whom I'd provided a draft to before, that last sentence needs to be added. And that consideration be given to updating the committee's terms of reference. So I'll make that motion.
Okay, so it's on the floor as a motion moved, and we'll look for a seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Clark, and we almost had a three-way tie, but thank you, everybody. So it's on the floor for discussion, and thank you, Bruce, for doing that.
I'm very conscious of the time. I don't think I need to add anything further. Just those who aren't on and watching the water committee meetings, they will shortly be open to people who want to view them. We are posting the recordings now, so people can follow them. But simply, I would just make the point that each of these items is being worked on. And I appreciate Stuart isn't likely to have a holiday this summer.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Drake and Councillor Wilder. Oh, you're.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my whole video is like pixelated and I got like, I didn't get 10% of that. So I would really appreciate if the motion could be reread before we vote on that, if you don't mind, if we can have that reread, because I didn't get any of it.
Okay.
I'll reread. Can you hear me clearly, Lisa? No, I take it from your expression you can't hear me, but maybe Paula could try because maybe her audio is better.
Lisa, can you hear me? Okay, so the motion reads that the Water Committee term be extended to December 31st of 2021, and that consideration be given to updating the committee terms of reference.
You're muted, Lisa.
Unmuted. Yeah, I'm unmuted, but I heard that now. I heard nothing before that. Sorry, it was all pixelated.
Okay, you're
Take my
freezing
hand
up.
down. Glasses on. Thank you very much, Paula, for repeating that. I appreciate it. Now I got it.
So
I'm good.
Okay, good. And I've added my name to the speakers list, and I just have a very few quick comments. I would like to thank the committee and Chair Ian Devlin for their work on this committee and their diligent work, and for, I think, working carefully and in a manner that has the best interest of the community at heart. And so I would like to thank them. Bruce did a very good job today working to see if this was introduced, whether they would accept it. And I thought their comments were good. They were clear, they were pointed, and they helped to get us in a direction where we need to as a community. And I made an earlier comment that staff, when we went to the break, deserved it because we fit in on a very, very busy day with very tight timelines. We fit in the meeting with the water committee. So thank you to staff on that. And we've all collectively made some commitments, and we're moving forward on it. So thank you. Okay, any comments on that? Any questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I will note that it carries in the affirmative and it was unanimous. So we will now move to, Bruce, that's everything?
That's it, yes. And I don't have no other items yet.
Yep, no, that's good. No bylaws. So on correspondence proclamations, that correspondence items 8.1 to 8.6 be received.
Second.
Councillor Drake moving, Councillor Clark seconding. So it's on the floor.
All in favor?
All in favor? Any discussion? No, all in
Aye.
favor? Aye, okay. And,
Aye.
okay, good. And I'll note that it carries in the affirmative. Now, we have two items there that are not as much action items, but they are items that may be of interest to the community. Lorna, did you want to just talk about 8.3 just quickly to draw attention to the people in the water committee group are very immersed in it, but it would be useful just to share this to community as a whole. If you would, please.
Yes, Your Worship, it is a letter received from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Local Government Infrastructures and Finance Branch. And the letter is with regard to investing in Canada's infrastructure program, environmental quality program. And it has to do with the Village of Balcarra Reservoir. And they thank us for our application under the environmental quality program. And they would like to advise that after careful consideration, the above noted project was not selected for funding under this grant program. The program received significantly more applications than could be funded. This decision does not reflect on the importance of this project for your community, but rather the degree by which the program has been oversubscribed. And that's the summary of what the letter says, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just that's helpful. And I would like at this point to thank on behalf of the community, Nellie Shin, our member of parliament, for her work on this. She has been working hard and keeping in touch with us. And she was, realized that we had put it forward as a previous council and wanted to try and support it in any way. So I wanted to recognize that. And then Lorna, did you, on this one, we have one that was a strategic plan 8.2 that's a priority, and staff did a good job in getting this. Would you like to just let people know it's, I got a call on Saturday from someone who was, must have looked at the agenda, was very excited about this, but would you like to convey? Because I think staff did some very good work on this.
Yes, Your Worship. This is a letter from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And the title is Integrated Asset Management Long-Term Financial Plan. And it was an application that was submitted. On behalf of the Municipal Asset Management Program, it is my pleasure to confirm that the Village of Balcarra has been approved for a grant in the amount up to $50,000. in the near future, I'll be contacted by someone from the FCM to finalize the agreement for the grant. So that was really good news.
Yeah, very good news. And thank you, Lorna, to staff for your work on that and to others. And it just to remind the audience, it's a strategic plan objective of ours. And we had made the decision. It was very high up we would hold because we collectively did not want to spend money that we did not have. So we'll look to move forward in the coming weeks on that and in the fall. Okay, so anybody else see anything? We'll go to new business then. Any new business? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Okay, so I have a new business that I would like to talk to council about. This is something that I brought up a few times already in the past. And given the busy summer that we've been having, warm summer, and all the numbers of visitors in the park, I would like to try this again. We're having some problems, you know, some days more than others, that people are coming after hours when the bylaw officer is off and parking on Mitten, parking all over and going to the parks and doing sometimes questionable things as fireworks and all that. And sometimes just to hang out at the park. So I would like to see if there's any opportunity for us to extend the bylaw officer hours until a little bit later at the day. So I would like just some feedback prior to actually making a motion on this. It would be really good to have on busy weekends. I'm not saying every day because it's not necessary every day, but on busy weekends and as staff deems necessary to have those hours extended possibly to 7:30 or something like that. 7:30 p.m., 8 p.m. Because, you know, it's still quite light out and we're still getting a few people in after those hours.
Okay, are you asking staff?
Yeah, so through the chair, what the feasibility of that would be.
Okay, through the chair to Lorna.
Your worship, we are able to ask our bylaw enforcement officer if that's possible. Under certain human resources conditions, you cannot radically change staff hours. But I found that she's been very amenable to having her hours changed. I don't know if it could be till 7:30 or 8 in the evening, but certainly we could have her start later and work later and add a couple hours to her shift if she's agreeable with that.
Okay, good.
Okay, so sorry, Mayor Ross, please go ahead.
Well, no, you go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to see that in busier days, busier weekends, going until 8 p.m., possibly starting later, if that's the case. But yeah, I think we should give it a try on this. That's something again that I brought up quite a few times, and yeah, so that's what I'll have to say for now. I'll hear what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wilder. Councillor Wilder.
Unmute myself. There we
Okay.
go. Take my little hand down.
Yeah.
There we go. This is a really minor point that I just like to bring up, and it might even be a moot point come the fall. But while we're doing our Zoom meetings, I would actually like to suggest, and I have in the past, and it hasn't actually been integrated, but that the chat be disabled.
I'm sorry,
I
you're
find
straight.
it distracting.
We can't hear you.
I find some of the comments that are on there debilitating. I don't find it a constructive at all. And I just think that if you were in a council chamber where we are in a council hall where we're having our council meetings, and these comments would never be permitted. And I just find it's not constructive at all. So
Sorry,
I would
Councillor
like to
Wilder.
suggest that
Yeah.
as long as we're having Zoom meetings, the chat portion. What? I'm sorry.
So,
I was
Did
just
I
going
go
to
wrong?
say that we didn't hear you in the beginning, and I was going to say you were referring to the chat portion on Zoom.
yeah, you're going in and out, Lisa, Councillor
Oh,
Wilder.
you see, I'm pixelating again. There we go. It's where I am. I'm sorry. And I was supposed to be on. The point was that the chat portion of the Zoom, I think, should be disabled. And it shouldn't be permitted during our council meetings, just like if we were in the chambers, count of people, like people that are in there wouldn't be permitted to make those
You're Councillor
comments.
Wilder, you just froze
So
up again.
I don't like seeing those comments, those negative comments on chat. Dang. It's my,
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're hearing
You
you
can't
off
hear
and
me
on,
now.
but I think we're getting the.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
They disabled chat. Did
So
you get that?
we did. So to sum it up, you would.
Just disable chat.
So are you looking to give notice of a motion on that? Or are you looking to give?
Sure,
staff-
if I can do that tonight, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you could. So you give notice and it would come up at the next meeting. Would you like to do that? Okay, thumbs up. So why don't you move
Yes.
that and then see
Yeah,
if there's
I
a-
mean, if permitted, I don't like the idea of chat.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of chat.
So let's see if we've got a seconder right now for that.
Yeah, I'll second that, but I
Okay.
thought, yeah, okay, I'll go back after.
Yeah, no, I know what you're thinking. I was thinking too, but we'll go back after. How does that sound? We haven't lost you. There was an interlude. So there's a motion. So the motion would be that that the chat feature be disabled. And
During our Zoom meetings.
during our Zoom meetings, okay? So that would come on the next council meeting as a notice of motion. As a motion.
Does it have to be a notice of motion, or can I not make a motion right now?
You can make a motion.
Well, if you want to, do you want to do it right now? You can.
Sure, I do. Yeah, we're under new business. I can make a motion, can I not?
Yep. Correct, Lorna?
Yes, that's right. And we have a
Yep.
seconder, your worship. So
Yep. So it's on the
I'm
floor.
making a
properly.
motion right now.
it's on the floor.
Okay. So I say this with trepidation. You're welcome to speak, but we probably understand what you would like. Is that okay? But would you like to go ahead and add a few more without the pixels? Or you good?
Myself?
Are you?
Oh,
are you-
myself?
Yes. You're,
Yes, I would. I've
Okay.
had many comments from many neighbors, many residents. How disruptive and it is. The comments that are made, they're not questions. People aren't making questions on, I hope you can hear me. Sorry, I'm in a
yes.
pixelated area. People aren't just making questions, giving questions. It's always negative comments, negative, negative, negative. And it's like a battering back and forth, and it's disruptive, totally. And this would never be permitted if it were sitting in a council chamber. It would never be permitted. So why would this be permitted on a chat? I don't get that. It's like, just disable it. It's a one button. So let's just get rid of it. We don't need it.
Okay.
People get to chat, people get to talk all the way through our council meetings. They have every opportunity through our council meetings. We're very generous with that. We're very, very generous. all along, would you like to speak? Would you like a question? Do you have a question? Do you want, we have answers? You do that, and then even going into public question period. So there's many opportunities that people have to speak. They don't need to go into the chat and
Okay, good. And I'm going to
make
go.
all these negative comments that are disruptive. Not, I'm done. Sorry.
Okay. And I will now
done.
go
Thank
to Councillor Drake, and then seeing no other speakers on council, I'll go to Deborah Struck. So Councillor Drake, please.
Thank you. I support Lisa's point. We wouldn't, again, we're trying to duplicate a public council meeting. So unless you were passing notes to everybody at the meeting, you wouldn't be communicating during a meeting. You have an opportunity to speak. So yeah, I support Lisa's suggestion. I would like to get back to Carolina Clark's once we're done with this. So thanks.
Yeah, and we will go back. I indicated, Councillor Clark, that I was going to go to Deborah Struck, and then we'll come back to you and see if there's any other councillors who want to speak. Deborah, welcome.
Hi there. And mine was with regards to Carolina's suggestion to do with extending Shay's hours. And yes, the public has figured out she doesn't work Wednesdays. There's certain groups of people so they know that they can come and park and not get ticketed. And I did see one horrid example one day. Somebody brought in their big, huge motorhome and had parked it by the park one time, and I guess they saw her, so then they moved it, but then they moved it to the other side, and I guess she must have gone over and said, no, sorry, you can't park here. They left, and that happened earlier in the day, probably about noonish. And then later on that day, I'd gone for a walk to the park, was walking up the road at 3:01. They came right back down because I guess that's when her shift ends. So obviously people are talking. And so I would be very grateful and thankful that that would be looked at. Another question, I guess, to Lorna through the chair or whatever, with regards to, can the RCMP come and ticket? And maybe if they can,
Deborah, I don't mean to cut you off. Let me come back, but we're on a motion right now.
Okay, sorry.
I just, and it's not your fault, but when we come back to Councillor Clark,
okay,
you can put up your hand and we'll do that just so if there's anybody else right now that would like to speak on the chat feature. Can you, okay, Councillor Clark, Councillor Snell, and Dave Warren. Okay, so we'll go in that order if we can. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. So yeah, I will support Lisa's motion. I agree. I think, the public is given lots of time during the meetings for feedback, and all you have to do is put your hand up and speak up. So I will support her motion today. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead. Next, we have Councillor Snell. I think you wanted.
Yes, thank you. I'm afraid I can't support that motion. I think when the Zoom was created, it's a unique feature, and one of the features is the ability to chat. And I think if we want to restrict what goes on the chat, then we presumably can do that just the same way when we amended the bylaw for council procedure during the public question period. And I think sometimes when we raise an issue, a question will come to a villager's mind, but he could sit there with his hand up for quite some time before he gets the opportunity to speak. Whereas certainly he could put an intelligent question in the chat that could be addressed subsequently. And the only reason I mention it is I was at a Zoom meeting a short while back, and there were a good number of people on the Zoom meeting. And when the chair was asking for any questions on each issue that was raised, He asked for people to put their hand up and appear, just as we are doing tonight. But they also asked the questions. He asked the moderator, "Are there any questions on the chat room relating to the subject?" So I think everything that Councillor Wilder has said is absolutely true. There's an awful lot of rubbish that comes up on our chat line, but I think if our villager is asked to put any questions that haven't been answered or what on the chat, I don't see a lot of harm in that. But so I have some reservation on restricting the ability for somebody to raise a question in whatever form. And it's up to us to really set the rules, just as we have done, as I said before, on the public question period. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I put my hand up on this, and I appreciate all the comments, including yours, John's. But I just feel that for me, I've already kind of acted on this. I don't pay attention to the chat at all, because I think the comments are not about, generally, when I went on a few times, I was just surprised and absolutely couldn't believe some people were putting comments on like that. So I actually think we have a forum. People don't have problems getting on. We canvass quite effectively through council. Council's good to sometimes add and do different things. I think there's a forum right here. And so my sense for voting on this is just, I don't think what's been happening has been working. And I don't want people, because I've been approached and they say, "What do you think about it?" And I say, "I don't pay attention to it." And I think we just need to focus people to be able to talk. This is a wonderful forum, and they give their name and they talk. And we've got a few other features coming up. So I'm going to support that and respect others on council who may not. So anybody else on council on this? Dave Warren, my apologies. Sorry, I jumped in. Sorry, you go ahead.
I think the topic, the motion has merit, but I believe it should be tabled until the next meeting. So it'll be on the agenda, so folks will be aware of this topic and want to discuss it in the next meeting. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that. And sorry, I went by you. My apologies, Dave. Deborah, are you on this one? Nope. It looks like you're lining up for the next one. So I don't see any further questions. So I will look to call the question. All those in favor of the motion. Oh, Lisa, are you on again? Sorry.
No, I'm good. I was thinking that Deborah Struck had her hand up, and I was wanting to make sure that she had an opportunity to speak. That was all.
Yeah,
My apologies.
No, that's okay. I think we've covered that off. And all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And those opposed? Okay, okay, so we have 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Okay, so the motion carries in the affirmative. Okay.
Hey, Mayor Ross, may I just make a quick comment? I put my hand up too late. Is that okay?
Sure. The vote's finished, but go ahead.
I understand. It's just to Dave Warren's point. The motion, by the time he gave his feedback, was already moved and seconded. So the vote had to take place right now, just for clarity, rather than
thank you.
waiting for the next meeting. Yeah, no problem. I just want Dave to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that for him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
On parking.
We're now going to return to.
Amy, put your hand down.
Pardon me? Councillor Clark, I think, wanted to be on the speakers list now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Ross. So going back to the parking thing. I can move a motion if Lorna, through the chair, if Lorna would like me to, or we could do this in the way of, well, as we've been doing with a few of the things. Like I just want the opportunity for the bylaw officer to stay here until later during the day. I think that's important, especially now on the high season, which is August, and given the fact that we're not going to have any meetings from now until September. I'm concerned on that that in between. Thank you.
I will definitely look after that, Your Worship, and follow up and
Yeah.
whatever adjustments we can make. Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that makes some sense. And Councillor Clark, so I understand that what we're proceeding with is direction and with staff to look at this. Does that make
So
sense?
that makes sense. So Mayor Russ, can I get your input on this? Do you think we need a motion on this, or do you think it's best to leave it as?
Well, here's
Mhm.
here's my sense. I actually think that I will just say what I've known on a day recently when, as I said, I got up and checked the Vancouver Sun, grabbed the Vancouver Sun, and I could tell things were moving quickly. I gave Lorna a call. I don't say to her how to do those things, but I said, I think we've got things moving right now, and we're going to have a lot of cars because about approximately 2,000 have been turned away. And she immediately said she would work with Stuart to make sure that that adjustment was made. We actually worked with the RCMP. They moved away from going out on boat detail to basically between Anmore and Belcarra to manage that problem. I would say this from my experience, we just want to leave it with her to be able to, because I actually think the piece on this is, and I don't want to break it to people, but people always figure out schedules. So the more they're intermittent and they're not kind of hammered down in public, but there are going to be people, because people go home at some point and then people are going to come and do what you didn't want them to do. So
very good feedback. Thank you.
yeah, but I do think that I would just say this, Councillor Clark, because you and I have spoken. I thought Lorna had people out right away, and then like literally as we spoke, we had the RCMP meeting Shay, and they were then meeting members of the public who weren't doing the right thing together. But are you okay with that, Councillor Clark?
Absolutely, and I do trust Lorna's judgment on this completely. So I agree with what you're saying. So
okay, and
yeah.
okay,
Thank you.
So let me go to Deborah Struck, please. Thank you for being patient and coming back to our discussion.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, I got confused about the order there too because of trailiness. You kind of answered my question, I think. So the RCMP are involved, and can they ticket if Shay's not on? I guess that's a question to
So
Lorna.
why don't I get this question to go through myself to Lorna, and I think she'll have an answer, but if not, well, go ahead, Lorna.
Yes, Your Worship, the RCMP are able to ticket if Shay is off. However, I have received an email today, and it is the Rural Division who are allowed to ticket. And a couple of them are going to be off now. So the other RCMP members are available for other RCMP work, but they don't really have the information on ticketing. So I'll follow up with them though and see if perhaps we could explain the system to a couple of the other RCMP officers who will be covering for the ones that are off on vacation.
Okay. And then another question I have to the chair, to Lorna, is are the public works people, are they able to ticket? And then if they are, can they do the ticketing on Wednesdays when Shay is?
They should be able to, right?
Because I have never seen, I guess I have seen them ticketing before, but not in the last several months. So I don't know. Perhaps.
And isn't Shay off on Tuesday and Wednesday? So we have 2 days that we have, and we have no support there. To the chair.
Lorna, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. Definitely public works staff are able to ticket, as well as Paul Wiscar, because we do have parking issues around new buildings, those types of things. So they are out there and they are ticketing. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there was probably a time recently with COVID where, because we were keeping people segregated who had those critical jobs, not that all our jobs aren't critical. So we're now moving into time where we've got a little bit more latitude. Okay. So Deborah Struck, did that answer for you?
It does answer. One of the things that I'm noticing and listening to the people in Anmore, having the ability for residents to park down here, and it's wonderful when I see residents, you know, from Maine or whatever coming and using the park, that it really is a gift. And I'm really thankful for it, for the residents that don't live near the water, because the number of people in Anmore that are complaining and sad that they cannot access Bunsen and Sassamat on the weekends because it is so busy. So it really is a gift that our residents have that guaranteed that they can park there. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Wilder. And then maybe we can conclude this matter and
Wrap it up.
wrap it up to
Yeah, we
public.
can wrap it up. I apologize. I'm sorry. I missed through the chair, I missed Lorna's comment.
Which one? The
So
latest?
the fact that Shay is off on the Tuesday, the one we just talked about just like a second ago.
Yeah.
The fact that Shay was off on Tuesday and Wednesday, who we do have somebody that's monitoring, or we do have staff out there, right?
Correct.
So to ticket,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. And David Goodman, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mine was on a different matter. I didn't know whether when you said you're going to wrap it up, you meant you're going to wrap up this section or just that issue. So
Well,
mine is on a different issue.
We're wrapping it up to go into public question period. Did you want to be the first person on public question period?
Oh, I think we're still in new business, right? Are we still at a new business?
Okay, if we are, what's next on new business?
And then we can go into public.
Okay, do we?
I'll
Okay,
hold off till then.
Okay, do you have something on new business, Lisa?
No, I do not. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll put my hand down. Put my
Okay,
hand down,
so
put my hand down.
that's why I'm trying to move us on. I just, not that I'm looking at the clock, but David, public question period. You're first. Welcome.
Thank you. I wondered if we could get clarity on a couple issues. David Warren, I thought, made a very good point with respect to no notice of motion or motion being voted on. And I think Carolina Clark was I think wrong in suggesting that there was no options. Clearly, tabling a motion or deferring a motion can only happen once the motion is already on the floor. So I didn't understand that comment, but could we get clarity on that? And the other is, when is a notice of motion required as opposed to simply making a motion? Those were questions that I wondered if I could get clarity from somebody there.
Okay, so on notice of motion and a motion, and and Lorna, you can jump in. I'll take the first part. On the ability for a member of council under new business to move a motion and have it seconded is absolutely fine. A notice of motion is where a councillor may be seeking to do something and actually moves a motion and does not get a second, so they can give notice for the next meeting. And they don't need a seconder for that, but when it comes to the next meeting, they do. So it has the effect of bridging over and getting it to the next meeting. So at times you may see a councillor move something, there's no second, and then they would look to do a notice. Okay. And I think well, I don't want to be speaking for Carolina, but I think the piece is she indicated that we were in the middle of a vote. That's, I think, but Carolina, if you wanted to add something to that, you're certainly welcome to, or Lorna.
Sure, Mayor Ross. Yes, I should have been more clear because the vote had been called. But yeah, but Dave Goodman is right. He makes a very good point. It could have been tabled. And to my understanding, it could have been tabled if the mover and the seconder would agree on that. But I'll leave the procedures to Lorna to respond. Thank you.
But
Your Worship, sorry.
follow up on that. I think, again, that's not quite correct in that tabling, the motion when it's on the floor and has been moved and seconded belongs to the floor, and the mover and seconder don't have any more rights than anyone else when somebody suggests that they would like to see it tabled.
If I may, my comment came after the question was called and after the vote took place. I think that's why it's a bit fuzzy. What happened, the sequence of facts. So he put his comment in. I raised my hand to speak on his comment, but I didn't raise my hand fast enough. And by the time I could speak, the vote was already called and took place. If that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to belabor it. I was just trying to correct some misinformation, that's all.
Okay. Okay, so we're at public question. Thank you, David. Do we have any other questions from the public? Okay. Seeing none. And David, your hand's down now, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, no, good, thank you. And I would say that it's appropriate for a counselor to move adjournment at
I so move.
10:41, Counselor Wilder and Counselor Drake seconding. All those in favor? Aye.
Now my burned hand is good now.
Just at the end, it always happens, doesn't it? Okay, thank you, everybody, for your attendance tonight, and take care till we see you next.
Thank you.
Very much.
Good night,
Julie
everybody.
Chamberlain, it's nice to see you online here. I see you there. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night.
Just so you know, I'm officially on 4 weeks holiday. There you go. Officially. There you go.